had no idea.
We've got Ruben on the iced coffee hour. And then we've got this video of how to become a 37-year-old broke loser. Jesus. This is a Kino vid.
Topic that I've been thinking about doing for a while now, and something happened recently that made me think it's finally time to make this video. There are lots of videos out there on how to become a millionaire, but in this video, I'll teach you how to become a broke 37-year-old loser, despite having an advanced technical degree from a prestigious university. Now, there are lots of people on the internet who like to lie about their qualifications, so to show you my expertise in becoming a broke loser, let's do a review of my current financial and living situation. So as of today, I have about $650 in my personal bank account, and I have one personal credit card with a balance of about $1,580, and I have a second personal credit card with a balance of about $830. In my business bank account, I currently have a balance of about $120, and on my business credit card, I currently have a balance of about $3,100. Now, recently, I acquired a couple new unexpected liabilities that made me think it's finally time to make this video. So I recently scheduled a visit to the dentist after being overdue for a checkup, and a couple days after I scheduled the visit, I felt what I thought was a filling fallout. But unfortunately, the dentist informed me that actually the tooth had fractured, and it was going to need a root canal. So these days, a root canal costs $1,737, and apparently this one needs a crown put on top of it as well, so that's another $1,500 on top of that. And for those of you who are wondering about dental insurance, I've done the math before, and it's cheaper to not get insurance. So here's those two liabilities added to the list, but it's not all bad news, because I still have a few more assets to add to the list. I also have a tax-free savings account with $250 in it, and I also have an RRSP account with $1,620 in it. And finally, I also have an old Bank of America account that has around $1,500 US in it. This will exchange to around 2,050 Canadian dollars. So in terms of the immediate dental work, I will be able to cover this, and I've already taken steps to shut down these accounts and cash them in. So this explains the current state of my balance sheet, but what about my cash flow? Currently, the cost of my rent is $1,100 per month, and for food and personal expenses, I spend around $300 per month. And for things like internet, phone, and a few other service expenses, I spend around $200 a month. Now, as of today, my only source of revenue is from YouTube, and over the last 6 months, the revenue has been around $700 on average. This leaves me with a monthly net cash flow of around negative $900. Fortunately, I do have one of the $700 YouTube payments coming in a couple days. So together with my existing bank account balance, I can definitely pay rent for the month. And according to the dentist, the dental crown is something that I won't have done until January. So in the meantime, I can still use some of the cash from these liquidated investments. However, this overall financial picture is completely unsustainable in the long term. Now at this point, you're probably wondering, why don't you have more income? Where's all your...
Is this... I can't tell. Is he going to be criticizing dipshits, or is he going to be presenting himself as like fucked by the system, or is it like a big mean video trolling both sides, or what? I guess we're just going in with an open mind. Let's see what we got.
Investments. Why don't you have any savings? What have you been doing for the last 10 years? And I'll answer all of those questions later in this video. But first, let's talk about my living situation. For those of you who have been following my channel for a while now, you know that I'm currently being rent-evicted, so I might as well provide an update on that subject. So far, the landlord has given out 61 eviction notices in this building alone, one of which was sent to me. The landlord has also filed a formal request with the Ontario Tenant Board to request my eviction. My eviction hearing is currently scheduled for February 19th, 2025. This landlord is extremely famous in Ontario and has an exponentially growing empire of buildings. What he does is buy up older rent-controlled buildings and immediately start issuing N13 eviction notices in waves. An N13 eviction is a legal way to evict someone from a rent-controlled property.
Okay. I just want to be very clear here. Okay. I'm trying to be gentle. Okay. I'm trying to be gentle because I know the housing takes are the most triggering ones. But I will say, just from my very limited anecdotal experience, it feels like people in Ontario, or at least people in Toronto, that get rent-controlled units are literally living like the fucking dream scenario. That like, I feel like I know people with the craziest, amazing places that they're paying like $1,200 a month CAD for, that are like rent control, and they're like, I am never leaving this house or apartment. I'm never ever leaving this place because the deal is so insane. But I don't know if that's for everybody, but Lawson Harrison just got at least $3,000 of dental work done in Brazil for around $150. W South America. Nice.
For extensive renovations. In these N13 eviction notices, he claims that the renovation process will take 8 to 9 months and that the unit will be uninhabitable during the renovation. This is despite the fact that I can personally confirm that the eviction process will take 8 to 9 months.
Jeez, 7 to 10 months. Fuck that.
And that the unit will be uninhabitable during the renovation. This is despite the fact that I can personally confirm that my neighbor's apartment was renovated, and that renovation took less than 2 months, possibly as little as 1 month. The stated reason for these so-called extensive renovations is supposedly to replace the plumbing stacks. However, according to another tenant, the bathroom plumbing stacks were already replaced 10 years ago, and that didn't require that everyone be evicted. And furthermore, others have
What is that evidence of? Okay, I don't know. All right.
claimed that they talked to the person who has historically maintained the plumbing in this building, and the claims of needing to replace the kitchen plumbing stacks are dubious at best, and even if it was necessary to replace, it doesn't require vacant possession. After the N13 renovation has been completed, the tenant is supposed to have the right to return to the unit. However, this landlord has a reputation for not honoring that requirement. And furthermore, at that point, you've already been displaced somewhere else for multiple months. There have been well over 100 news articles written about what happens in these buildings after this landlord takes over. A few months ago, we had a fairly substantial fire in the apartment that was being occupied by the person who does the day-to-day management of this building. According to the fire department, the source of the fire was either an air fryer or the stove, and wasn't deemed suspicious. According to a tenant who lives on the same floor, the smoke detector inside the individual unit didn't go off, so the fire was able to grow for quite a while until a tenant noticed it and pulled a fire alarm on that same floor. The fire occurred on the floor above me, and I actually witnessed smoke coming out of the top of the apartment door, the same floor. The source of the fire was either an air fryer or the
Occupant indicated that blank did have an air fryer in that location and it was plugged in, but it wasn't turned on at the time of departure. Nothing suspicious was found that would indicate arson. Hold on, I'm sorry. Sorry, okay.
About what happens in these buildings after this landlord takes over. A few months ago, we had a fairly substantial fire in the apartment that was being occupied by the person who does the day-to-day management of this building. According to the fire department, the source of the fire was either an air fryer or the stove, and wasn't deemed suspicious. According to a tenant who lives on the same floor, the smoke detector inside the individual unit didn't go off, so the fire was able to grow for quite a while until a tenant noticed it and pulled a fire alarm on that same floor. The fire occurred on the floor above me, and I actually witnessed smoke coming out of the top of the apartment door just before the fire department arrived, and the fire was substantial enough that the firefighter needed a breathing apparatus to even enter the apartment. We also experienced things like surprise inspections for unauthorized appliances, like
I wonder if I guess the implication he's saying is that the owner like set the unit on fire to kick people out, I guess, or okay.
air conditioners or freezers. I even got an apartment. We also experienced things like surprise
Informing me that during our recent inspection of your rental unit, we discovered the presence of additional ones not permitted according to your leasing agreement. We apologize for any inconvenience that may cause. Can I ask you to remove any other spots, such as window AC units, additional refrigerators, chest freezers, and portable dishwashers? Jesus. Okay.
inspections for unauthorized appliances, like air conditioners.
Oh, wait a second. Is there, do they pay electricity, or is it is electricity or gas or something like included in the cost of rent or something? Is there some weird shit like that set up? It'll be master metered, like for the whole building, or
freezers. I even got a notice for an inspection and
next sentence.
experience things like surprise inspection.
Alternatively, if you would like to keep any of these additional appliances in your rental unit, excluding a portable dishwasher, you can transfer the hydro into your name. That's water. Huh. In my Latin there. You know. Please notify the management team as soon as possible to transfer the hydro to your name. Please note, as per municipal legislation, AC units not permitted must be professionally installed to be permitted. We respect your right to comfort. I thought it was comfort with your unit and wish you awaiting legal action or termination. Okay. All right.
Inspections for unauthorized appliances, like air.
Oh, wait. Hydro is electricity bill? Oh, never mind then. Fuck me. Just kidding. Oh, gotcha. Okay. Oh, so then that is... Okay, gotcha.
Conditioners or freezers. I even got a notice for an inspection and unwanted pest control treatment that was then canceled at the last minute. And one of the conditioners or freezers. I even got a notice for an inspection and unwanted...
Oh, I guess that actually hydro being electricity would make more sense. Who the fuck would call your water hydro? That makes sense. No one is ordering hydro for their apartment or for, your utility. Oh, this is my gas and hydro bill. Yeah, that makes sense.
Unwanted pest control treatment that was then canceled at the last minute. At one of the other buildings, the landlord also hired security enforcement that resulted in a physical altercation with elderly tenants there. This landlord is so notorious that he's even been mentioned by name in the Legislative Assembly of Ontario. Despite all of this attention on the issue, nothing ever happens because these practices are entirely legal in Ontario. Attempting to fight back legally is...
I feel like I haven't seen anything too egregious yet. The estimate for that time for renovation seemed pretty stupid, though. 7 to 10 months, even for major repair work, seemed kind of dumb. But other than that, I don't think anything in here has been too egregious or even egregious at all, but okay.
Also becoming increasingly difficult in Ontario. Many lawyers that practice tenancy law have shifted to only representing landlords and don't offer their services to tenants anymore. Some of the...
Don't they typically... I've heard that the laws in Toronto are written to be quite favorable for tenants. Same thing like in California, but I don't know. Okay. But yeah, who knows? What do I know?
Tenancy law have shifted to only representing landlords and don't offer their services to tenants anymore. Some of you are probably thinking, why not set up a tenant union or work with organizations like Acorn? A tenants union in this building was set up, but the landlord was able to successfully intimidate the leaders of the tenant union into giving up their apartment by issuing additional eviction notices, claiming that they were a nuisance to other tenants. Intimidate the
Kitchen couple claims landlord is targeting them for organizing
leaders of the
tenants
tenant
unit
union into giving up their apartment by issuing...
You have 7 days to stop the activities or correct the behavior described on page 2 to avoid eviction. You will not have to move out if you correct the behavior described on page 2 within 7 days after receiving this notice. Is he going to show the behavior on page 2 or?
Doing additional eviction notices, claiming that they were a nuisance to other tenants. They also returned from a brief vacation one day to find that the power to only their apartment had been shut off, and that all of the food in the fridge had been warmed up and
The surprise inspections seem kind of fucked, Destiny. I live in the U.S. and we get 24-hour notice if the landlord needs to stop by. That's the only thing that had me raise an eyebrow. Well, that's going to depend on whatever your local rules are. I feel like where I've lived, I feel like they're allowed to do surprise inspections. Usually they'll give notice for like fire inspections and stuff, but I think they're allowed to, especially if they get reports of stuff, I think they're allowed to show up and like do things. Like if you're, if I have management, like sometimes people will smell smoke upstairs and management will come to my thing and they'll be like, is anybody smoking in here? Can I walk around? I guess I don't know if they're legally required to be allowed to in. I don't know, maybe I can say no, but I haven't actually, I don't know what the laws are around here. All of those surprise inspections that he listed were scheduled. Oh, that might be true too. Yeah, because you wouldn't have a thing showing him. Maybe, I don't know.
spoiled. As for Acorn, they have provided some introductory advice on dealing with rent evictions and provided some emotional support for tenants. They also organized some protests. In terms of more specific legal action, I won't say much more than that, because many tenants in this building have not had their eviction hearing yet. It's entirely possible that my landlord or someone who works for him may even watch this video, given how much is financially at stake. If you do the math on how much money you can make from evicting a building full of people who are protected under rent control, it's about $1,000 per month. For a building with 100 units, that's a profit of about $100,000 per month, or about $1.2 million per year. Currently, my landlord has at least a few $100 million worth of assets under management.
A profit for evicting somebody? I don't understand how that even makes sense. What does he mean a profit for evicting somebody? What's the profit come from? You no longer have a renter. Does he mean it's a profit in that you can evict somebody and then you can raise the rent, and then if you get a new renter in, that's the additional rent that you could collect? I think that's what he means. He's jumping a lot of steps there, but okay.
And his portfolio is rapidly growing. Attempting to organize tenants in this situation can be very difficult because many of them have chronic physical and mental health conditions that make it difficult for them to do extensive legal research. Some of them are cancer patients or elderly people with Alzheimer's. Many of the younger people are not doing well either. Some of them are completely distracted with taking care of elderly loved ones, or just barely struggling to survive financially. Some tenants have lost faith in our legal system and government altogether, and simply consider it a foregone conclusion that the legal system will actively work against them. This sentiment is not universal, but it's also not an exaggeration. The mainstream media tends to downplay and contort the message of what's going on in these buildings. One tenant mentioned that he was in a local coffee shop one day, where he saw an older woman reading a newspaper article about his own rent eviction. He said that this lady remarked that the people in this building were all bums and just need to get jobs. This is despite the fact that the man already has a full-time job. Now, many people have arguments against the entire idea of rent control. The argument is that in order to make it economically feasible to actually build new housing in this country, it has to be profitable to do so, and rent control makes this much more difficult. This argument makes sense to me, but even if you disagree with the idea of rent control, I made life decisions to stay here based on the understanding that rent control was a real legal protection that existed here in Ontario. Having to move is very disruptive, not just because of higher rents. My mail gets delivered here, my government addresses are set to here, my internet is hooked up, all of the random stuff and groceries that I've stocked up on. Even if I move somewhere else and start paying higher rent, I'm starting to wonder what I would do if I end up in this exact same situation in a few years. A woman in one of the other buildings that's experiencing a rent eviction says that this is the third time that she's been in this situation. Now, I know that when I do a video like this, there are sometimes
I think rent control is super fucking stupid, but that's fair. I mean, if a unit is rent controlled, then you're there to take advantage of it. There's nothing wrong with that. If that's the law, you should take advantage of it. Like, if I had a rent controlled unit, yeah, you better believe I'd squat the fuck out of that rent controlled unit. There's nothing wrong with him planning his life around that, assuming it's the law and that's what he's expecting. Yeah.
There's very generous people out there who will give huge donations, but I'd ask that you not do that for this video. My problems are not your problem.
At Destiny, he's claiming that removing rent control would increase profits by $1,000 per month per unit. Are rent controls really that extreme? My understanding is that rent control in places like Toronto and New York City are that extreme. It's absurd. The rent control shit is really stupid. It's just a dog shit policy for a million different reasons. But
and it's not your job to fund my unsustainable lifestyle. Fundamentally, situation. Now, I know that when I do a video like this, there are sometimes very generous people out there who will give huge donations.
Does rent control mean they can't raise the rent at all? I think it means different things in different areas. It just depends. I think the standard version of rent control usually means that you can't raise the rent past like a percentage, but that percentage is going to lag really far behind market price. Like maybe you can raise it like 3% or 5%. But so over many years, when rents are increasing at more than that rate, then your unit that you live in is going to be significantly under market rate for the location or for the area or whatever.
But I'd ask that you not do that for this video. My problems are not your problems, and it's not your job to fund my unsustainable lifestyle. Fundamentally, the math here on my income just isn't working, and it's my responsibility to get my monthly income up, otherwise something is going to break. I debated whether I should even share this information at all, but since this is my real lived experience, I figured it's worth sharing. And if you decide to pursue an entrepreneurial path like I did, this may very well be the outcome for you. And I think it's important to provide the world with more examples of this. There are a lot of motivational speakers out there who will tell you to take risks, be bold, reach for the stars. Not every story is a happy ending, and unfortunately, most business owners who find themselves in this situation are too embarrassed or psychologically compromised to talk about it. As a result, all you hear about are the success stories or embellishments of the truth. Paul Graham has an interesting essay where he touches upon this topic. I also want to point out that I'm in very close
2007,
contact with my parents,
Okay.
and they've offered a number of times to help me out with this situation. I also have family in Toronto that I can stay with temporarily if necessary. I've also had some hypothetical discussions about what it would take to leave Ontario entirely. And finally, if you watch some of my other videos, you'll see that I've passed on a number of really great employment opportunities in the past, so you really don't need to feel bad for me. This rent eviction situation has led to me getting out and talking to my neighbors more and engaging with local community organizations. These experiences have made me much more aware of how much society has deteriorated in the last few years and made me question why I live in Kitchener in the first place. Kitchener has been going downhill over the last few years, and the reasons that I chose to live here 7 years ago no longer exist, so I'm honestly somewhat neutral on getting evicted. I used to have a few friends from school who also lived in Kitchener who I meet up with regularly. One of them was another entrepreneur who did quite well for himself. A couple of years ago, a homeless encampment started up near his house, which led to things like theft and vandalism. I met up with him last summer to talk about startups and technology for a few hours. He had already made a lot of the same observations that I did, and decided to leave Canada entirely not long after. If I'm able to win at the tenant board, that'll be awesome, because then I can continue to live in my apartment. If I lose and get evicted, that'll also be awesome, because then I don't have to pay rent anymore. I can also go visit with family and have new adventures. It'll be lots of fun either way, so you should subscribe to join in on the adventure. The great thing about YouTube is that you can just passively observe other people's situation without having to get involved. And if some of you were still thinking about helping me out, I'd ask that you instead just become a long-term channel member on the 99-cent tier. This way, if you get buyer's remorse, you can just cancel in a month or so, and it still helps me out the same in the long term. So, the next important question is, what's your immediate plan? What are you going to do to improve your situation? The immediate plan will be to take the funds from the TFSA, RRSP, and US bank account and use that to fund the root canal and dental crown. If necessary, I can ask a family member for a small loan for a couple months to see if things improve. If things don't improve or I get evicted, I'll put all of my stuff in a storage unit. Then, I'll probably couchsurf for a while and spend some time with friends or relatives. Eventually, I'll probably leave Ontario entirely and move back into my parents' basement for a while. As for the rent eviction, I'll continue doing legal research and contest the N13 eviction process at my hearing on February 19th.
Do you need is a root canal like a pressing operation? Like if the pulp is already dead and rotted, and then a root canal is basically just removing the pulp. Once it's already dead, does it matter? Like if you wait a while to do it, or it keeps rotting, like it'll rot into the tooth, or do you are root canals time sensitive, I guess? I don't know. Or do you need a root canal? Do you need a root canal? Fuck me, dude. This isn't gonna... Can you go without root canal? Okay, when you delay root canal, you risk unnecessary bacteria growing around the nerve tissue. Left untreated, several complications are likely to occur. Systemic inflammation, pressure and swelling, abscess, drainage, tooth and bone loss. This is from a dental fucking website, though. Huh, okay. I assume maybe you need it. Yeah, I don't know. Google, what are risks of not getting root canal? Dental group. I don't like this can not only result in bone loss and infection, but can also result in an acute, like, I don't like phrases like, I want numbers, because like when you look at, it reminds me of like looking at drugs. Like, how do I know if a drug is safe? Like, what happens if I do a drug and it's like, you can get a heart attack and die? Like, okay, well, you said it's coming from a dental website, like that's a bad thing. Well, in the United States, I can speak personally to this, and what people say is that in the United States, dentists dramatically oversell root canals. They're like root canal salesmen, like an insane amount. I remember when I went to the dentist because I had tooth pain for 2 days or 3 days, and they tapped my tooth, and the lady immediately said I needed a root canal before I even got a fucking scan. And then they did one X-ray. There was a little bit of inflammation. I just done orthodontia though because I had my retainer just got in for my thing or whatever, and then I had to go to a whole other thing to get like it investigated, where they shocked my tooth and then burned it and freezed it, and they're like, oh, okay, actually no, you're fine. And it's like, okay, I don't know why the fuck she recommended that, so I don't know. I'd heard like it's said on the internet that American dentists root canals, that we sell so many root canals. It's like an insane thing in the United States. Like there's like 20 million, 30 million root canals a year or something. I'm sorry, 15.1 million root canal treatments are performed annually according to the ADA, American Dental Association. Yeah, but I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know. Not Elon mentioned you in this space, and then you linked to space. Don't care. Okay. The tooth can continue to rot, and eventually there won't be enough solid tooth left to mount a crown in. I know you keep saying that they can rot, but like, does that matter if there's like an active infection in the nerve, or does it matter? Like, what if it's already like all rotted and it's just like the pulp is just dead? Like, is that conducive to, like, when you say it can rot, is this like 5% of rotted like nerves become an active infection that could be threatening to a thing, or is it like 90% of them? Like, you can basically count on it happening. You know, that's yeah. Don't you need to clean it out? I don't know. That's what I'm not sure. I just don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But
18th. Now, I also need to find a way to get this monthly revenue up, and I have a few ideas in mind that I'll probably try over the Christmas holidays. My overall plan is to double down on producing YouTube content. As crazy as that might sound, YouTube is the only business activity that's shown consistent revenue growth over the last 10 years. I said before that the average monthly YouTube revenue was around $700, but this month it's already on track to be around $900. You're probably wondering, couldn't you just hustle and get another software development contract? And sure, I probably could, but I've been doing that for 10 years now, and there's just no long-term growth in doing that. Technically, I still haven't even quit doing contract work. This latest period is just the first time in 10 years where my contract work pipeline has dried up to nothing.
You can count on any dead tissue becoming an infection. Yes. Yes. I remember I had a mentor once who had, I think it was an infarction in his leg, and all of the muscle tissue in his quads ended up dying, and it was excruciating. Now he lives the rest of his life in chronic pain. Does a lot of Vicodin, walks with a cane.
One of my long-term clients, who I've worked with for over 5 years, requested recently, for the first time ever, that we pause all future work for a while, and I have a feeling that it's not coming back. So yes, I could get out there and hustle for more contract work, but by the end of this video, it should be clear why I'm not going to do that. The short version is that finding contract work is actually very easy, but filtering for work that actually pays you and isn't a waste of time is nearly impossible. YouTube has never made a commitment to pay me and then let me down, but I can't say the same for the contract work that I've done. A lot of people seem to think of pursuing YouTube as some sort of requested recently, for the first time ever, that we pause all future work for a while, and I have a feeling that it's not coming back. So yes, I could get out there and $. You're probably wondering, couldn't you just hustle and get another software development contract? And sure, I probably could, but I've been doing that for 10 years now, and there's just no long-term growth in doing that. Technically, I still haven't even quit doing contract work.
Wait, software development contract?
To find a way to get this monthly revenue up, and I have a few ideas in mind that I'll probably try over the Christmas holidays. My overall plan is to double down on producing YouTube content. As crazy as that might sound, YouTube is the only business activity that's shown consistent revenue growth over the last 10 years. I said before that the average monthly YouTube revenue was around $700, but this month it's already on track to be around $900. You're probably wondering, couldn't you just hustle and get another software development contract? And sure, I probably could, but I've been doing that for 10 years now, and there's just no long-term growth in doing that. Technically, I still haven't even quit doing contract work. This latest period is just the first time in 10 years where my contract work pipeline has dried up to nothing. One of my long-term clients, who I've worked with for over 5 years, requested recently, for the first time ever, that we pause all future work for a while, and I have a feeling that it's not coming back. So yes, I could get out there and hustle for more contract work.
I've got this guy that emails me, the crazy schizo dude from a long time ago. He emails me so much shit. He gets very mad whenever people are mean to Arabs and Muslims, which I understand because you guys are crazy about it sometimes. But he's like, he hates it when he's like very big on drawing the distinction between like software devs and like, software engineers or whatever versus just like IT people. And that compared to like every other degree, people that work in IT or computer anything are super ultra fucking spoiled. And they have unrealistic, insane expectations that are completely and totally unsustainable, and they all need to like rope. So much of what he types is like in caps and shit. Your entire chat is software devs and IT guys. There's a reason for that. People need to stop calling the software and IT/cybersecurity market the engineer market. The software market is in a weird spot, true. CS majors are actually struggling to get hired. A lot of them are wishing they did computer engineering or electrical engineering instead. There's such a mass of IT and cybersecurity grads too. Their market is different than the market for chemical/electrical/aerospace people. Stop calling it all the same engineer market or the same tech market, because it's not. Call it the dev market or programmer market. Now, these words actually have tangible utility instead of calling everything engineer, because if I hear engineer market is so bad right now, the first thing I say is, no, it's not. It's been really good in my opinion. And the other guy gets defensive and starts asking questions, and then I'll say, yeah, I got hired chemical process engineer Exxon out of university pretty quickly, and I know some guys who got into Pfizer or aerospace, friend who got into Raytheon at 87K with 5K sign-up bonus and blah, 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 blah. And then suddenly they don't know how to argue against that, because suddenly it's become clear we're both using the word engineer, but talking about two very different markets. I wish people would stop using words like job in tech or engineer market or I work in big tech, IT/cybersecurity. These words all mean nothing. People should be forced to describe exactly what it is that they do and what it is that they're talking about and provide proof. If they want Invoke to make an argument in a live debate, they should have to do that. I'm tired of hearing, oh my God, it's so tough in the tech market. It's so tough in the engineering market. Oh my God, Shut the fuck up. This is all software devs, programmers, IT guys, cybersecurity. This is all in caps, by the way. This is a completely different market than people who graduate in chemical or electrical engineering or aerospace. Stop lumping this together. The job market is fucking fine. The job market is too good for chems, for chem-Es. If you go into oil and gas, the job market is in most STEM fields, especially aerospace and chem-E, is fucking insanely good right now. We got Donnie J coming in, and he's probably going to frack like crazy in the USA. Chemical engineers usually drop in a Democrat presidency and rise in a Republican presidency because they love oil. So it'll only get better for the next 4 years. Job market is fine. Pharma, same deal. Yeah, this is like a 20-page email. This guy just hates comp sci people. And I'm here for it. The comp sci boom happened like 10 to 15 years ago. It's over. It happened. It went. Cope. Comp sci/IT/cybersecurity is the definition of the middle class that you hate so much. Entitled, stupid, annoying, want to work from home all day and do nothing, want to make 100K straight out of college, don't want to settle for 60K, despite that being a very solid number for a little 22-year-old. Do they not realize that number goes up every year, right? They should all just go be primary physician doctors instead. The better profession for midwits that's in really high demand right now. Mommy and daddy gambit is what locks the doctor profession from lower economic classes. If med school was free, everyone would be doctors, since the course material itself is low intelligence requirement, just high memory requirement. But ChatGPT to Pro has helped me more with medical issues than any doctors. Doctors who are surgeons, though, or emergency room doctors like House is not an ER doctor, are a different breed, though. Those guys are actually high IQ. Primary care physician, I'll spill out my drink laughing at those fucking retards. All the Indians that I know are doctors if they are somewhat successful midwits, or professor/PhD if more intelligent. Both female and male Indians follow similar career paths. Indian Americans usually disown any Indians working in IT or programming. They considered poor people from India or of lower socioeconomic status or just shameful. And Indian parents don't want their daughters or sons to be married to an IT guy. They want to this guy, I'm sorry, there's so much here. This guy hates. Sorry, hold on, I'm scrolling down another part. Also, remember, this is in caps, the data you looked up online for software engineers was for computer science degree holders only, aka actual college grads. The problem is, these days, 70% of the people calling themselves software devs or engineers do not have CS degrees. They do not have any degree. They're what they call self-taught, and it's a meme. They are applying for actual software engineering jobs without a CS degree and thinking it's fine. Some of them go to these weird boot camps, and some of them get online certs, and some of them actually sneak their way into actual software engineering jobs, especially like 10 to 15 or 5 to 10 years ago. This only happens in software. You will never find an aerospace engineer calling himself that, applying for those jobs without a fucking aerospace engineering degree. That's like, what the fuck? You absolutely would not be able to do the required work. You're going to model the fluid dynamics around a missile, second order differential equation for rate of mass loss from the fuel burning away, which is probably coupled with the differential equation for drag coefficient with a thermodynamic analysis on temperature changes, entropy changes because the fuel is escaping a container, the pressure drop in the rocket, the center of gravity for the rocket as the fuel burns away. Probably have to derive the diffusion equation for that particular rocket, which you can Google, but essentially it's one of the most common occurrences in real engineering, where a time derivative is a function of both space and time equal to the Laplacian of the same function of space and time, and a constant. It expands into many terms outside of vector form. It's not the hardest thing out there, but who the fuck is going to do that without a bachelor's degree? I could probably get hired for an aerospace job, and so could an electrical engineer, but a software engineer would never be able to do it. The reason? Because aerospace/chemical/electrical/mechanical is all learning basically the same shit. Yeah, I'm sorry, this guy is... Okay, all right.
But by the end of this video,
He hates computer people.
For a while.
And the only reason I thought that came up in my mind is because when he's saying he's a software engineer and works on contracts, I'm so curious, like, what that means. Like, oh shit. Hold on one second. Food here. All right, I gotta grab it 1 second. Are you serious? Wait, I just got baited. Never mind. DoorDash just said take a picture of your food, and it's not even here yet. Is it trolling me?
I have a feeling that it's not coming back. So yes, I could get out there and hustle for more contract work, but by the end of this video, it should be clear why I'm not going to do that. The short version is that finding contract work is actually very easy, but filtering for work that actually pays you and isn't a waste of time is nearly impossible.
Like when he says that, and I'm not judging this guy also, by the way. If you're doing like if you're doing like freelance work and you like know a little bit of programming, whatever, that's awesome. That's basic. You're doing gig work. You're trying to apply skills to the real world, maybe even without a degree. I didn't hear if he had a degree or not, or if he was like super qualified or whatever. However, right, it sounds like you're going on Facebook and looking for people who are saying like, hey, I want to build a website for my maid business. Like that's what it sounds like.
YouTube has never made a commitment to pay me and then let me down, but I can't say the same for the contract work that I've done. A lot of people seem to think of pursuing YouTube as some sort of vain attempt to become a celebrity or something, but I've come to view it as...
He showed his degree at the start. Oh yeah, what was the degree for? 1352 we're at.
...that I've been thinking about doing for a while now, and something happened recently that made me think it's
Oh, software engineering from University of Waterloo. Super high average salary. Oh.
finally time to make this
I
video.
wonder why he's just doing like weird like contract work stuff then instead of having like a job in the field.
Leave Ontario entirely and move back in my parents' basement for a while. As for the eviction, I'll continue doing legal research and contest the N13 eviction process at my hearing on February 19th. Now, I also need to find a way to get this monthly revenue up, and I have a few ideas in mind that I'll probably try over the Christmas holidays. My overall plan is to double down on producing YouTube content.
Wait, fuck,
as crazy
I
as
went
that might
to
sound,
timestamp.
YouTube is the only business activity that's shown consistent revenue growth over the last 10 years. I said before that the average monthly YouTube revenue was around $700, but this month it's already on track to be around $900. You're probably wondering, couldn't you just hustle and get another software development contract? And sure, I probably could, but I've been doing that for 10 years now, and there's just no long-term growth in doing that. Technically, I still haven't even quit doing contract work. This latest period is just the first time.
Demographic and background. Damn. Women make up 21% of respondents and students in the class. I would have thought that number would have been like lower. I thought it would have been like 5% or something, but okay. I wonder if it's been growing. Median hourly compensation increased over time. This is the profile of the students who graduated. The average hourly compensation per median hourly, the lowest or maybe lower in the last co-op because students were not able to work in the U.S. or work from U.S. companies. Wait, what? I'm reading this wrong, right? The compensation for the first year of full-time work for respondents will average 284,728 CAD with a median of 260K. New graduate total? This can't be right. That's all in, not salary? I don't care if it's all in. For first year graduate? I don't know why you retards in class, or not in class, fuck, I was reading this, keep saying, oh, that's the idea, it's fake money. It's not fake money. I don't know why you fucking morons are saying this. This is probably what, like 220? Oh, I'm sorry, 194. I'm sorry, it's only 194,000 USD. My bad. LOL, fake money. Where's the, get him. Got him. University of Waterloo, software engineering is one of the most prestigious and high-paying degrees in all of Canada. Jesus. If I'm reading this correctly, this is insane. Software engineering class at Waterloo for 5 years, all 92 graduating students. God damn. That's insane. Okay.
In 10 years, where my contract work pipeline has dried up to nothing. One of my long-term clients, who I've worked with for over 5 years, requested recently, for the first time ever, that we pause all future work for a while, and I have a feeling that it's not coming back. So yes, I could get out there and hustle for more contract work, but by the end of this video, it should be clear why I'm not going to do that. The short version is that finding contract work is actually very easy, but filtering for work that actually pays you and isn't a waste of time is nearly impossible. Okay. YouTube has never made a commitment to pay me advantage nowadays, the million having a sign outside of your business. In the long term, your presence has replaced other forms of advertising, like classified ads, that each of it nowadays. In the 1970s, there were only hundreds of celebrities, but today there are tens of thousands of YouTube channels that each have at least millions of subscribers. Having a social media presence has replaced other forms of advertising, like classified ads, yellow pages, or even having a sign outside of your business. In the long term, I'd prefer to do better than just barely survive. And to do that, I have to focus on building a source of revenue that can actually grow in the future. The next thing that you're probably wondering is, why don't you just get a normal 9-to-5 job, like regular people? That's a very good question that most of you are probably thinking right now, so I'll break down my thought process on the subject. For my life and career development, I've decided that I need the following 4 things: reliable cash flow, compounding exponential growth, human interaction, and the ability to build or become a part of a community. Let's consider reliable cash flow first. The biggest benefit of having a 9-to-5 job is the reliable cash flow and being somewhat sheltered from swings up or down in the economy. Having said that, the concept of job security is not what it used to be, especially with the recent waves of high-tech layoffs, but it is still much more stable than entrepreneurship. As I've mentioned before, the cash flow from the consulting and contract work that I've done over the past 10 years has been extremely unstable, but it's much worse than just getting large, infrequent sums of money. The biggest issue is with people paying late, not paying at all, or talking up a storm about some huge project or major investment that's just about to start, and supposedly bring in lots of new work, only to never mention it again. YouTube, on the other hand, gives a consistent payout every month.
Always make sure that you're have realistic payment schemes for contract work that you accept, guys. If you're marketing a skill, if you're a first-time person going out in the world and you're being stupid, then fuck you or whatever. But if you've done some work and you can deliver on work, don't ever be ashamed of collecting upfront 50% or whatever. Find out what your industry standard is. Too many people do gig work sometimes, or from what I read, in the auto fucking get the videographer subreddit that pops up because of the camera shit I used to read. People are embarrassed or shy or scared of billing up front or asking for half up front or doing things, and then they end up getting fucked over after they've already completed all the deliverables. Don't be that person. You have a marketable skill. People are paying you money for it. They're making money off of it. Charge them for it. Fuck them. Okay, now my food should be here. 1 sec. Ooh, okay. Finish this one meeting.
And supposedly bring in lots of new work, only to never mention it again. YouTube, on the other hand, gives a consistent payout every month, and as long as I don't get banned, that's likely to continue for the foreseeable future. The revenue could potentially go down, but so far, it appears unlikely that it will abruptly go to zero. My next consideration is about compounding long-term growth. In the 9-to-5 jobs of the bygone era, this was something that you could frequently look forward to. For this, I'm thinking of those people from the 1970s who worked their entire lives at a single company and moved up the corporate ladder by working every position there. I'm sure that there are still isolated examples of this today, but this career path is becoming increasingly rare. More than likely, if a company tries to sell you this vision of the future, it's just a tactic get you to work there and then throw you under the bus the instant the economy turns sour or there's some kind of corporate restructuring. The other type of compounding growth that I think people don't focus enough on is in relation to skill set and personal branding. If you want to get a tech job at a company,
This guy was living year to year with no savings, doing fairly little work, only taking contracts that when he needed extra money to live his easygoing life. But now the contracts are drying up for whatever reason, and he can't make his finances work because he never invested into anything into his career. He's had a good run for 10 years of easy mode, but now he has to actually grind. Jesus, maybe. Not everybody. One of the things, I don't know if this bleeds over to Canada or other parts of the world as well, but in America, we really hype the idea of like the entrepreneur or people who can be self-employed. And obviously, as a self-employed person, I think that's great and fine and awesome. But some people just do better. Some people do better chasing their own money. Other people do better like working hours that are assigned to them. And it sounds like a Chad business owner, self-employed master versus like the wage cuck slave. But it's not like that. Just like people's minds are just oriented a little bit differently around chasing different types of income. Not everybody has the brain for like, I need to get more money this month because I'm self-employed and the only money I'm going to have is the money that I go after. A lot of people that do self-employment either can't manage their time or they, oh, cool, I made $5,000 on this sale. Like I'm going to not work for 2 months because why should I? I've already got enough money, right? It's always good to be aware of what, I guess, like what your brain is geared towards.
company today, you'll have to spend your own time getting up to speed with the latest JavaScript frameworks. But then, when you get laid off in a year or two, you'll have to spend your own time again relearning an entire new set of JavaScript frameworks. You could argue that these new frameworks represent progress, but there's a cost to keeping up with these changes, and companies will push that cost onto workers as a condition of even getting employed. If you calculate the cost of preparing for, searching for, interviewing for, and getting laid off from a given job these days, the total compensation could look quite a bit different. Younger, fresh graduates are a lot more tolerant of constantly running on this treadmill of new technologies, many of which don't add significant value. This is one of the reasons why companies prefer to hire younger workers instead of older ones. Since they're young and naive, they don't realize that they're wasting their time learning a framework that no one is going to be using in a couple years. Another important part of your career growth to consider is to think of how much personal branding you can build from whatever you work on at a company. If I told you that I personally wrote the software in the most popular app on the first version of the Apple iPad, you might be impressed and want to hire me because of this. In reality, I can't say that this is true because I've never written any software for the iPad. Instead, I wrote software for a live radio app that was intended to run on the very first version of the BlackBerry Playbook, a commercially unsuccessful tablet that you've probably never heard of. Halfway through the development of this app, the product manager decided to make substantial changes to the mockups of the app, purely based on a whim. This led to us throwing away much of the work that we had done in the app, without him ever even reviewing it. Even though I spent a lot of extra time and late nights making sure that the app would run well on unstable networking environments, the app was never even commercially released at all. And if I tell you about all of this, you won't be impressed, because you've never even heard about this app at all. You don't even know if I just made all this up. Maybe I'm lying. When I reflect on
Okay. I'm going to give general life advice, and I'm going to assume that it applies in this situation, but it might not. Nobody gives a fuck that you were, for me at least, I don't give a fuck that you were part of a team or part of a whatever, or did this thing or whatever. Like, you should be able to sell what you actually did. So in what he just said there, right? Like, oh, the manager or the project lead or developer or the owner of the business wanted to change the direction of the app. Rather than like saying that in an interview, like, oh, we were working on an app and then the guy decided to scrap the whole thing. And then we worked on a new app, but like, the whole thing was scrapped because nobody knows about this tablet, right? You should be selling the skills and the like type of work that you did on the particular thing, right? Like, we were working in this framework and then the developer wanted to change the scope of the project, and in an attempt to save money and reduce the amount of hours, I was able to convert this much of the project into this new framework without needing to rebuild whatever from, a different thing, or I was able to do this, or like talk about the things that you did to demonstrate competency or to demonstrate skill in the thing, rather than he just gave the worst, like what he just gave is like the worst self-advertising or self-promotion I've ever heard in my entire life. Like, that was so bad. Sell it more. Sell what you did more. Like,
the app would run well on unstable networking environments, the app was never even commercially released at all. And if I tell you about all of this, you won't be impressed, because you've never even heard about this app at all. You don't even know if I just made all this up. Maybe I'm lying. When I reflect on the software that I've been paid to write at the various companies that I've worked for, I realize that almost every piece of software that I've been paid to write in my life has been a waste of time. Long ago, I worked on some user interface features for a company that did product reviews. Eventually, this company got acquired, and the product that I worked on was shut down and no longer exists. I worked for another company that was trying to build a sleazy advertising link wrapping feature. The CEO insisted that I work late on more than one occasion.
I mean, what are you looking to do? Do you want to be like the lead dev in a video game company, or like a super crazy startup that ends up being wildly like? My guess is going to be most people's contributions to huge code bases are going to be hard to find, or it's even going to be stuff that like customers just never even interface with, or users hardly see, or like, is my guess. I mean, like, I don't know what you're looking for here. A lot of software becomes obsolete. That's the nature of everything, right? That's the nature of everything related to engineering and everything too, right? Like, I noticed that all these roofs that I put on houses, like 30 years later, none of them even existed anymore. And it's like, well, sure, but
to fix some critical bugs and produce reports. Eventually, they gave up on this idea, and the entire company no longer exists. At another company that I worked for, we were tasked with maintaining and upgrading a number of reports that were available on an internal portal website. After doing much work to maintain the reports, it came to light that no one at the company was actually using the reports, and that they had in fact been written by an eccentric former employee on the unfounded assumption that the reports would be useful to someone else. I also did work for a company that asked me to rewrite a server that multiplexed network communications between a large number of IoT devices that were installed in vehicles. I spent a lot of late nights staying up until 3 a.m. to try and get the server rewritten in time to meet the company's deadlines and performance criteria. Eventually, I did finish the server, and the company quadrupled the number of paying units soon after. However, the company had misrepresented their finances and imploded shortly afterward. The founders simply walked away and ghosted all of the employees and contractors. I don't even think that they kept the source code for anything that I wrote. Even though I had no control over the failure of these products, I still bear the personal branding cost associated with them. Another consideration is that many tech companies operate with a high level of secrecy, even if you do.
the personal branding associated with them? I guess people probably might look more favorably upon you if you're involved in successful projects. But I feel like if you can speak to the quality of your work, or if you can show like what you've done or demonstrate that competency somehow, would people really judge that super harshly? I don't know. Maybe. I'm not sure. I don't know.
Work on something important, you might not be able to talk about it when applying for new jobs. On the other hand, I found that every piece of content that I publish online has a very small but incremental compounding benefit. Each time that I release a new video, the individual video doesn't make much money or attention, but it does cause a little bit more traffic on everything else that I've published in the past. All of the abandoned software that I've written will have exactly zero benefit to society over the next 10 years. However, at least a few of the videos that I've published will probably have some benefit to someone over that same time period. I'm not trying to pursue some sort of idealistic goal about changing the world or maximizing impact. I'm just trying to be practical about what I think is going to be relevant in the long term. An economy that's based on writing garbage software that immediately gets shut down or abandoned after doesn't seem very sustainable to me. So far, I've been very wrong on this take, but I keep coming back to one of Warren Buffett's favorite sayings, and that is that if something cannot go on forever, it will eventually stop. Now, the third item on the list is human interaction. At almost every corporate job that I've ever worked at, I'd be in almost constant isolation, either in a cubicle or a room by myself, or in noisy opened office spaces where everyone just wears headphones all the time. Sometimes we would have meetings or stand-up, but these were always high-stress interactions that would focus exclusively on the low-level details of work. I've talked in other videos about the 10,000-yard stare and cubicle life that I experienced at Amazon and Nvidia, and other companies are only marginally better. When I talk about things like this, there will no doubt be some people, mostly managers, who say things like, "Our company culture is not like that at all. We have a fun corporate environment. We have Nerf gun battles."
Wait, was he trying to say that he worked at Amazon or NVIDIA at one point? Or is he just saying that he's heard this from other people that work in these environments?
And a foosball table that you're welcome to play any time of day. At one of the companies that I worked for, we had Mojito Fridays, where we would all take off work at 4 p.m. and make mojitos and other alcoholic drinks. After having stared at our screens all week, our conversations would usually devolve into a discussion of whatever Jira ticket we were working on. For some people, the corporate social environment of Mojito Fridays is exactly what they're looking for, but I'm not one of those people. And the last item on the list is the ability to build or become a part of a community. In the corporate world, attempting to build your own community is likely something that could get you fired. Of course, you could call the company itself a community, but for obvious reasons, the values and goals of the company don't always align with, and sometimes actively work against, the values and goals of the employees. On the other hand, I've recently started to think more about how YouTube could be used as a vehicle for building a so-called community. I'm actually somewhat surprised at how many interactions I've had with people that I know in real life through YouTube. Clearly, a lot of people watch YouTube, and the possibility always exists to convert these online interactions into real-world ones. I don't have much time to focus on this right now, but this is something that I do think about for the future. And so, for the reasons that I've just described in this video and others, I've decided that I'll never be returning to a traditional corporate software development job under any circumstances. The next important question is, why don't you have any savings? What have you been doing for the last 10 years? The short answer is, I've just never been able to produce meaningful income. Here's a brief summary of my pre-university years. I was born in the middle of nowhere in New Brunswick, Canada, and did a bit of work in the forestry industry growing up. At 19, I moved out of my parents' place to live with a friend in a nearby city. At this time, I had around $5,000 in savings, and my pipe dream was to make money by day trading stocks. I spent a lot of time learning about and watching the stock market all day. I came to the conclusion that in order to be competitive in the stock market, I'd have to learn how to do automated trading using software, specifically artificial intelligence. I got a full-time job as a stock clerk at a local bulk food store and continued studying the stock.
My goal was to get out of high school and become a stock trader that trades using AI.
Market and software development on the side. This was in 2007, and I can remember watching and
In
rewatching
2007? Did we even have the phrase AI in 2007? I don't even know if we knew what AI was back then.
One very specific Google Tech Talk by Jeffrey Hinton on
In
restricted
2007, we were like, holy shit, did you see that I got a flat screen monitor? It's flat, motherfucker. Damn.
Boltzmann machines. Back then, I actually started trying to replicate some of Jeffrey Hinton's work based on recognizing handwritten digits. Since I had no formal education in software development,
Back then, AI was like when you'd shoot at the grunts, when Master Chief was shooting at the Halo, they would like hide behind like a wall. And you were like, whoa, oh my my God, intelligent. I'm sorry.
I didn't get very far with the automated trading. I had written thousands of lines of Visual Basic code to do backtesting of moving average-based stock trading strategies, and this code would cause my computer to reboot whenever it ran for long periods of time. In hindsight, I probably had a memory leak. It was around this time that I started to think more seriously about going to university. When I applied to the University of Waterloo, they said that since I was applying as a mature student, that I should first complete their self-study pre-university courses, which were supposed to be a refresher of high school. However, I found that these courses were not a refresher at all, and they covered completely new material that I had never seen in high school. In hindsight, doing these pre-university courses was absolutely necessary. After doing these pre-university
See, this is what you guys, this is what your programmers like. That's why programmers will say shit like, oh, all these new frameworks don't let us manage memory anymore. And the reason why is because you fucking retards could never do it. So now we're all stuck here, okay, using dog shit stuff that's leaky anyway, but at least we can't blame you for it.
courses that Waterloo had suggested to me, they actually rejected me, possibly because I was a bit slow in finishing some of these pre-university courses. I was ready to accept this rejection, but my father insisted on calling the university and asking why. As a result, I was put on a wait list, which did lead to a conditional acceptance to the software engineering program starting in 2009. Completing the software engineering program at the University of Waterloo took 4 years and 8 months, and consisted of 8 study terms mixed with 6 work terms. On the day of my last exam, I had $5,039.22 in my bank account. I also had no student loans, since the co-op placements were able to fund my education, which I estimate cost around $80,000. After graduation, almost all of my peers moved to the United States to take full-time positions.
He was his most successful. He peaked in college as an intern? Is that what I'm hearing?
$1,039.22 in my bank account. I also had no student loans, since the co-op placements were able to fund my education, which I estimate cost around $80,000. After graduation, almost all of my peers moved to the United States to take full-time positions. I wanted to start my own business though, and didn't have any kind of visa sponsorship to live in the States, so I chose to stay in Canada. Back in 2014, Canada was a politically stable country with a bright future ahead of it. At the time, I also still had a bit of a social network here of other entrepreneurial friends.
Is Canada politically unstable now? A despotism or whatever? Or what? Wait, what?
I officially incorporated my business on July 4th, 2014, and immediately began reaching out to people in my network to try and secure my first contract. By August 13th, I had secured my first contract with a struggling startup in Toronto that produced audio-related software. Around this time, I did everything that I could think of to try and start securing more contracts. I emailed basically everyone that I had networked with during my undergraduate degree. I asked many of my former professors if they'd be open to meeting with me and discussing my business ambitions. For a while, I also just walked into local businesses here in Kitchener and asked if I could chat with them about their business needs to try and pin down a market niche to go after. I also tried making some direct mail flyers for a while and mailed them out to specific companies. Another thing that I started doing around this time was writing blog posts as a form of content marketing. One interesting insight from talking with some of my professors was just how easy it is to get into grad school. I asked a few different professors if they had any kind of research work contracts that I could do. I had a couple different professors who were interested in the idea, but they said that I could only get the contract work within the context of grad school. From what I recall, it had something to do with the funding for the contract only being available if I was enrolled in a grad school program. I explained that I wasn't interested in grad school, but one of the ideas that was floated for a while is that I could just enroll in grad school to get the contract and then just skip all of the classes and bail out of the program since I didn't care about it anyway. This seemed a bit convoluted and the potential pay was quite low, so I didn't end up pursuing this route. During this period, I quickly discovered that the most likely reason that a potential lead wouldn't work out was because all companies only wanted to hire full-time employees and didn't want to work with independent contractors. To me, the whole point of starting a consulting business was to get a lot of high-quality work going at the same time, and then start hiring employees to do the work.
God, that just sounds like a dream. Wait, all these companies aren't just hiring part-time, they want full-time workers? What does that mean? Like stable hours, benefits, pension? Like, damn, really?
Train them, and build up the business. As for the first contract that I had secured with the company in Toronto, I had negotiated a higher hourly rate on the basis that my work would be temporary until they found a dedicated full-time employee. I started to think that maybe this would be the winning business model, to fill a role temporarily at a higher lucrative rate until the company found a cheaper full-time employee.
Oh no. Wait, can anybody read my mind? Who's connected? Let's see who's connected to my brain right now, the real fans. I just realized who this is. You guys have 30 seconds. Who's connected? Who's plugged into my brain? Radio Math got it. This guy is the Uncle Adams of software engineering. Oh no.
The first contract ended around the start of 2015, so by this time I had a little bit of savings to work with. During this period, I took some time to further develop a side project that I'd been working on over the last few years, which was a self-compiling C compiler and microkernel that was designed to run inside of a very simple emulator. Since I was a fresh university graduate, my mind was still focused on grandiose academic topics. One of the last courses that I had done in university.
Wait, hold on, but this is something you're working on. Did he say he graduated in 2007? And it was in 2015 that he was still working on this idea from college? Oh, no, 2014, sorry. Okay.
University graduate, my mind was still focused on grandiose academic topics. One of the last courses that I had done in university involved using static analysis tools like Coverity to discover bugs in software. I figured that if I could develop my compiler and make it good enough, there might be a business model in selling software for a more intelligent compiler with better static analysis and error messages built into it. My long-term goal was never to stay doing consulting and contract work forever, but instead to get enough cash flow and business experience that I could bootstrap a real startup with an actual product. In 2015, I pursued a huge number of potential business leads, a few of which actually resulted in revenue. One of which was actually initially advertised as a volunteer position. I decided to respond to the ad anyway, just to see what was out there. I would describe the company's product as something like a very aspirational community or social network for people who want to do charity work. I found some of the product's messaging to be a bit strange and confusing at the time, but years later, when the We Charity scandal made headlines, I saw where some of the inspiration came from. In order to do the development work of the website, the pattern that the founder was using was to recruit students from Conestoga College for unpaid internships. Many of these students didn't have the qualifications to do the work, and in some cases, these were embedded system students who were now being tasked with doing complex web development work. I tried to train some of these students so that they could do the development work, but the founder would grow impatient if the students weren't immediately productive. At one point, I think we had 4 of these unpaid interns, and the founder was still trying to bring more of them on board. Eventually, some of these unpaid volunteers quit, and by this point, I was already very familiar with the company's platform. Since I had been trying to train these students to do the actual work, I was in an ideal position to just go ahead and do the work myself. So I suggested to the founder that I could do some of this work for a discounted hourly rate. Since I had initiated this engagement as a volunteer, I was very careful to be extremely clear about the terms of the paid work that I was proposing. I clearly spelled out how much I would be invoicing for, and the exact dates upon which I would send those invoices, and the founder explicitly agreed that they understood. Almost immediately after I had issued one of the first invoices for the work I had done, the founder said that they didn't have any money to pay the invoice. At one point during this engagement, the founder abruptly told me that I should expect a phone call from someone who was reviewing one of the company's grant applications, without providing much context about the expected call. When the grant reviewer called me, he mentioned that even he didn't have much context about this company's product. He didn't even know the website address. So I provided the reviewer with the website address so that they could take a look at the product. The grant reviewer also mentioned that the founder had claimed to have obtained a patent for their product, but the application reviewer hadn't been able to confirm this. At the time, I recognized this claim as one that the founder had repeated to me on multiple occasions. I believed that the supposed feature that this founder had supposedly patented was effectively a set of coefficients on a linear equation that was used for scoring someone on a personality quiz. After I had the call with the person who was reviewing the grant application, I learned that the founder was quite upset that I had given the website address of the product to the grant reviewer. I finished up the in-progress work on this contract and became busy with other contracts shortly afterward. Another engagement that I had around—
Wait, why did you finish the work on the contract if you didn't get paid for your first invoice? Or I'm guessing, did the guy eventually start to pay, or?
the same time was from a man in the United States who had a full-time job working sales. He had a number of different business ideas and some kind of—
Get your contracts in writing and registered? Yeah, I don't know what the whole contract world or whatever, but like there are going to be some standard things that anybody that's ever done contract work has been involved in before, right? Like I imagine your most basic thing is you always have a statement of work where you send a thing and it's like, these are my deliverables, this is like my pay at the end, and then these are like the terms that you agree to pay me in, right? This is like I think a pretty standard thing. I imagine even in software development, right? You guys have like statements, SOW, statements of work, and then the person signs off on it, and then you're assuming you're hitting the deliverables, like you're going to be paid whatever monthly bullshit based on this. If somebody fails to pay, then you stop working. Fail to pay, fail to work.
Of Node.js application for collecting leads. He sent me a copy of this application without much context. I tried to get it running, but it seemed like there were parts of it that were missing. I asked him a few follow-up questions about this application, and instead of answering my questions, he instead sent me another unrelated piece of software for another business idea that also seemed incomplete. He seemed to switch topics a lot, and shifts his focus wildly between different hypothetical business ideas. For this contract, I did bill for a few hours of general consulting, but we never actually did pin down what piece of software to build. Another noteworthy lead from around this time was from a local government-funded organization that shall remain nameless. This organization supposedly supported innovation through programs that were funded on the taxpayer's dollar. For this lead, I didn't quite understand what the goal of the project was, but I ended up taking a meeting with them to discuss what the goals were for their project. From what I could understand, this organization had done a startup acquisition of some kind of web service from a small startup in the area, and they wanted to further develop this into some kind of product. The person that I met with talked very highly of their organization and the product that they had acquired, but I still couldn't quite figure out what they wanted me to do, even after asking a lot of pointed questions. For example, I asked them if the application had many active users already. This is very important to know, because developing on a production application is very different from building one from scratch. Specifically, a production application requires much more care in maintaining the contents of the database. You need to add things like database migrations and maintain the integrity of the data throughout the migration. But in a from-scratch application, you can just delete the entire database every time you do a deployment. When I asked how many active users they had, this person first suggested that it was a very popular app, and many people depended.
Wait, I'm curious, how many users would you need, or can somebody explain the difference between that? How many users would you need where you'd be okay redeploying the entire database from scratch? Why would you ever do that? Or this sounds like a thing where you haven't actually launched, like it's not like actually being used by users yet, whether it's only test users. Yeah, this sounds like a thing you would do like in a, I don't know if alpha and beta are even real words anymore, but like in a pre-development environment, or pre-development in a development environment before you actually like, before you have a product.
On it. However, after talking with them for a while, it was clear that absolutely no one was using this application. The person seemed to sheepishly admit at one point
Base?
that they were under some kind of contractual obligation to keep developing the app, and that my role was just to keep developing the app without any specific goal in mind. There was also another employee of this organization who was supposed to be present at this meeting, and furthermore, he supposedly had a grand vision of what this application would become. Even though he was invited in advance, he never showed up to the meeting, or responded to phone calls or emails throughout the duration of the meeting. And so, I never got to hear what his grand ideas actually were. I tried cloning.
Listen, okay, quick also tip. Listen, this is for a lot of contract-related work. I don't know if this applies more narrowly to software development or whatever. If you're going to work with somebody, you're not the fucking creative director. You ask the guy, what the fuck do you want? The guy gives you some, idea of what he wants. If you have to ask clarifying questions, that's fine. But it's not your job as a contractor to sit here and create a vision with some fucking retard that has no idea what's even possible, okay? Like if a guy is like, hey, listen, I want to build an app that makes it so that every time you get on the bus, like the GPS sees you move, and then it automatically sends you an ad for like a fast food restaurant. It's like, okay, cool, I got it. That's great. Do you want this to work in the city? Right? Okay, that's fine. Okay, you have an idea, ask some clarifying questions. Is it possible? I don't know, APIs to do it, whatever the fuck. Okay, cool. But if some guy's like, I want to build an app that's going to change the way you eat fast food. And you're like, okay, well, what does that mean? It's like, I don't know. What do you think is the best way to do that? Then you say you walk, okay? It's not your job. Unless you're like the creative director of a company or some bullshit to sit here and brainstorm with a retarded fucking customer. Because also, these people are never paying you anyway. And they're probably not even going to start development on any of these projects. They're going to have like 2 months worth of emails with you and they're going to drop you off completely. And then they're going to go to somebody else who is as retarded as they are. Bro, I've got the same vision that's nebulous and means nothing. Let's change the world.
And running the application, but the version of the software on the master branch didn't run. They were still in contact with the original developers who had moved on to other projects, and they suggested trying out one of the other 50 branches of this application. The whole thing seemed a bit sketchy to me, so I decided to pass on it. I also had a number of other bogus leads during this period. I also distinctly remember talking to one potential lead, who I would describe as a much less successful and much less charismatic version of Andrew Tate. He spent about an hour talking to me about his business ambitions while working out on the treadmill. I could barely hear anything that he was saying, but I do recall that he thought very highly of himself. He just seemed to want to tell me about how great he was, and didn't really have any software that he needed developed. For a while, I also entertained the idea of building websites for small businesses that didn't have them yet. I thought my sales strategy could just be to physically walk around and look at businesses, and then look up if they had a website. If they didn't.
Okay, I'm going to read this. I'm guessing this guy actually works in programming because he is typing like an autistic person who couldn't understand what I said, and now he's just typing what I said exactly, but in more words. So I'll read his in case other autistic people out there need the clarification. Destiny, that's not exactly right. It depends on your relationship with the client and in what areas you are talking. The engineer is definitely supposed to give guidance and propose alternative solutions if they can accomplish the client's vision better than what the client has proposed. This is still only as an advisory role, and the client's decisions are final in the end. Thank you. True. Okay.
I would just walk in and try to sell them one. I recall visiting one pizza shop that didn't have a website, and the son of the business owner seemed very keen on talking to me for a long period of time, but they never really seemed to want to commit to anything. Instead, they just tried to haggle over the potential hosting costs for a few dollars a month. Another local business that I visited commit to anything, and the son of the business owner seemed very keen on talking to me for a long period of time, but they never really seemed to want to commit to anything. Instead, they just tried to haggle over the potential hosting costs for a few dollars a month. Another local business that I visited was a print and copy store. The store wasn't visible from the road, and the owner lamented the fact that he had switched leases with another tenant who had better road visibility. They didn't have a website, and at first seemed very interested in getting one. I immediately went home and came up with a specific proposal and a quote that I thought would work for them. When I came back and presented it to them, they seemed to have completely lost interest in the idea. About 6 months later, their business had completely disappeared, and the unit was vacant. Overall, I came to the conclusion that if a business didn't already have a website, then they didn't want one at all. I also talked to one potential client who wanted to develop an app that was effectively designed for helicopter parents who want to monitor everything that their child does. They didn't have any money to fund the development, and the whole idea seemed a bit overzealous and intrusive. I mentioned previously that blogging was one of the things that I tried as a form of content marketing. Some of my blog posts ended up on Hacker News, and I figured that if I could develop more of a following there, then maybe I could get some contract work with Y Combinator companies. I actually know quite a few people personally who have gone through the Y Combinator program, and one of them told me that at one point I was actually recommended on an internal YC listserv, although I don't have access to this, so I can't confirm it. I do recall getting at least one inquiry from someone doing a Y Combinator startup, but they were only looking for a full-time employee, and as soon as I mentioned a business relationship, they lost all interest. I also tried posting once on one of the Hacker News threads.
I'm not trying to dog on this guy, okay? Because I'm sure he's like a great person. I don't think he said anything like that seems like he's evil or anything. But this seems like the kind of guy who would thrive in a 9-to-5 environment. Like, here's your task, like work on this, and then you're good. And then use the extra money and time you have. Like, if you want to pursue like contract work, or if you want to build a business, or if you want to do some passion project, take all of the money that you're earning from your full-time job, and then like throw your money and your extra time towards that. Like, just do that. Like, you working a full-time job is never going to get in the way of you pursuing a passion project like that, assuming all of your basic needs are met. It's never been the case that somebody's like, I really wanted to go after my dream, but I couldn't because of my 9 to 5. That's just not the case. If you're at that level where you're ready to make that jump, then you probably are at a safe spot to know that you can quit. Now, there are other things that can get in the way, like health issues or age or kids or death or black people. I'm just kidding. But the amount of time that you're going to waste being an unsuccessful business person, like, he's 37 now. Imagine if he would have been working like a 9 to 5 software engineering job for 10 years. Like, little bro would have $250,000 or more. Fucking Christ, bro. The median salaries, I'm sorry, maybe even more in the bank. Holy fuck, that Waterloo, the median salary shit was insane. Like, this guy might have enough money tucked away that he could literally take 5 years not working at all and like try to pursue a business dream if he wanted or something. But like, this is just not, I don't know.
For people looking for contract work and mentioned my services. From this, I got several calls and emails from one very persistent individual who proposed that I should sign a non-disclosure agreement before he would even brief me on the idea, because apparently it contained some military stuff. I told him that there was absolutely no way that I would sign his NDA, and he proceeded to tell me anyway. His idea was...
Programming 9 to 5 is extremely mentally draining. You probably have to be quite exceptional to run your own business on the side. When did I say anything about programming from 9 to 5? I said get a 9 to 5 job. That means you're programming from like 10:30 to 11:15. Okay, let's be real here. All right, let's be real.
is effectively identical to the one shown in Mark Rover's famous glitter bomb video, except in his case, he wanted to use a custom embedded device instead of using a cell phone for the network connection. This brings us to about the year 2016. During this year, I did a contract for a custom WordPress theme. The lead came from a result of networking with another local small consulting business that made custom websites. Initially, I was a bit confused because I thought this consulting company was subcontracting some of their work to me, but in reality, the person who ended up briefing me on the details of this project was actually a friend of the founder of the consulting company. When I met this person, I learned that the actual website was going to be for an industrial company in Alberta, and that I was to act as a subcontractor for this individual. After discussing the project and contract details, I signed a contract with the person who was subcontracting this work to me. Almost immediately after we signed the contract, they suggested that we should change the contract so that the client listed in the contract would be the company in Alberta and not the person I was talking to. Their reasoning was that this would save them a little bit of money on sales tax since the rate was lower in Alberta. I then asked him to sign a termination statement for the current contract, and we did end up involving the other party to act as the client on the contract. This contract only produced a few $1,000s in revenue. Throughout this period, I continued going to networking events to try and get more business leads. One lead that I entertained ended up being an elderly man who wanted to build automated day trading software that was based on a betting strategy that is effectively known as a martingale, a logically flawed betting system that is well understood mathematically. I explained to him why his system wouldn't work, but he wasn't convinced. He also tried to get me to work for $30 an hour understood that would get more business contract only produced a few $1,000s in revenue. Throughout this period, I continued going to networking.
Wait, I'm sorry, real quick. I will seriously answer that. I'm sorry. Working a 9 to 5 like is work, right? And it can suck and be draining in that sense. But what I'm telling you is that however draining you think a 9 to 5 is, this is probably more draining. Unsuccessfully bouncing from contract to contract, desperately trying to negotiate with people that don't know what they want without any guidance or idea of where you're pointed at in life or what you're trying to do, and not having a steady paycheck and not having, like, I agree, a 9 to 5 can be draining, but whatever this has been for the past couple decades of this guy's life, this is probably more draining. It's probably less fulfilling too, and it's not producing any fruit. Like, he has nothing to show for it, you know?
Events to try and get more business leads. One lead that I entertained ended up being an elderly man who wanted to build automated day trading software that was based on a betting strategy that is effectively known as a martingale, a logically flawed betting system that is well understood mathematically. I explained to him why his system wouldn't work, but he wasn't convinced. He also tried to get me to work for $30 an hour. Around this time, I think I was still quoting people.
Bro, who cares if it'll work or not? If he wants the product, fucking build it for him. It's not your job to fucking decide whether or not it works or not. Or I mean, like, listen, you have as long as you deliver a product that does its shit, okay, that's on him. We call those runtime errors, not compiler errors, all right? As long as it fucking works, it's on him if he loses money or not. Fuck him.
$50 an hour. I also talked to a middle-aged divorced woman at a meetup event who was thinking about starting some sort of food catering business and wanted to involve software somehow. After talking with her for a while, it occurred to me that she was just lonely and didn't have any serious business ambitions at all. In late 2015...
So let her pay for some company! Lil bro's talking himself out of jobs! Why is he talking himself out of contracts? What are you doing?
I had also started teaching as a part-time professor at Conestoga College. The main thing that I had been doing to try and get new contracts was visit lots of networking events. By chance, at a talk that I attended, I happened to sit next to one of the engineering department chairs at Conestoga College. I only had a chance to speak with him for a few minutes before the talk started, and I mentioned my C compiler and operating system project that I'd been working on for a while. He mentioned that they were looking for professors and that I should send him an email. So of course, I did send him an email, not expecting to hear back. But to my surprise, about a week later, I had a teaching contract at Conestoga College.
This dude has huge loser headspace. Surprised he lasted in contracting this long. I mean, it doesn't sound like he's got like a loser mindset. This is like, I feel like this, this feels so mean saying this. I'm going to reiterate this a million times because it sounds like I'm being patronizing. I'm not. There's literally nothing wrong with a 9 to 5. There is nothing wrong with a 9 to 5. Nobody is above a 9 to 5. When I went to college for music for me was my passion. I like music. It feels cool. I wanted to be a performer, a composer. And when I had to choose between my casino job or my music education degree, in my mind, I'm realistically aware of the idea that like I'm probably not going to get a job professionally playing music. This is like the top 1% of 1% of musicians. It's a saxophone, so I'm not playing for any orchestra or anything like that. So I prioritized my casino job. And the idea was I can work my casino job, and as I climb the ladder or whatever here, I can make a lot of money doing my casino work. And then on the side, I can pursue music more. I can do it that way, right? This is my mentality, or this is my mentality through choosing between college and work. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with being a 9 to 5 worker. There's nothing, you're not a wage slave or a loser or whatever the fuck else. And if you've got a better mind for scheduled work, it's so much better than this grind. Like, he sounds like he has a good grind set mind. He just doesn't have the skill set for finding like clients and then engaging with work in a long-term healthy way. It feels like, yeah. A lot of people see 9 to 5 as some dead-end job where you are working at a cubicle for 40 years and then retire, but you can absolutely move up and have a fulfilling corporate career. Yeah, like, or you don't even have to have a corporate career. Like, I think the reason why people view 9 to 5 as like dead-end shit is because they don't do anything with the rest of their time. Oh, I'm reminded of that subreddit post where the guy was like, you don't understand how much time 9 to 5 takes or whatever, okay? Like, there's other, like, you have other hours of your day, you've got weekends, you've got vacation time, like, you can pursue other things, and you're going to spend way more time slaving away at this type of stuff, especially if you're not successful here, than you ever would at a 9 to 5 anyway, so,
College. There's a lot that I could say about my experience teaching at the college, but I'll probably have to split that out into a separate video because there's just too much to say. The long story short of why I didn't continue teaching at Conestoga College was just because of how time-consuming it was. For a part-time professor, the hourly compensation rate makes it seem like it's fairly well paid, but the reality is that the amount of time that you're paid for and the amount of time that it takes to actually teach the course are completely disconnected. My teaching contract only paid me for the scheduled lecture time when I stood in front of the class to teach. Things like creating tests, marking tests, creating course material, responding to student emails, these were all volunteer activities that were expected to be covered by the hourly lecture rate. The college also had extremely poor public transit access. Since I don't have a car, my only option to get to the college was to take public transit, which was extremely overcrowded with students. There were several days when it took over 3 hours and 3 transfers for me to get home from the college by bus, when an equivalent car ride would have taken 20 minutes. This might sound like an exaggeration, but I can assure you that it's not. During the last term that I taught at Conestoga College, a strike happened, which lasted just under 5 weeks. Since I wasn't teaching during those weeks, I didn't get paid, but I was still expected to return at a moment's notice at some...
could he not get a car at all? You couldn't get a used car? As a Waterloo grad, it sounds like it would have been worth the investment, no? If you're saving literally 3 hours for a commute one way, the extra time there, like,
unknown time in the future. The strike was extremely stressful on students and faculty. From what I learned while working there, a similar strike happened a few years prior, and the reasons for the current strike were mostly related to broken promises made during the end of the last strike. During the brief time that I taught there was also a public transit strike, which made it even more difficult to get to the college. One of the next paid contracts that I actually did quite a bit of work on involved writing software to produce reports. I won't be more specific than that, but I will say that it's one of the better contracts that I've had over the years. This contract lasted until recently, and theoretically it could start back up in the future. However, on more than one occasion with this contract, there have been many months-long periods where payments have been late, and for multiple months in a row, the response would be, "Oh, I'll definitely pay that tomorrow." For this contract, the payments have always eventually come, but sometimes I have to wait a while. Teaching at the college and working on the reports contract kept me busy for most of 2016, but sometimes I have to wait a while. Teaching at the college and...
Wait, is he changing his lighting, or is he like taking days to do this? Is this like the next day? Why did it go from dark to light?
For this contract, the payments have always eventually come, but sometimes I have to wait a while. Teaching at the college and working on the reports contract kept me busy for most of 2016 and 2017. In 2018, I also started work on a contract with a local company that was producing IoT software and hardware. This company had actually existed for 7 or 8 years now, and I had actually been recommended to the company by a couple other engineers that I know to be competent and trustworthy. One of these engineers had done contract work with the company for multiple years now, so it seemed fairly safe and established. The company wanted me to rewrite a server that processed data packets from a fleet of IoT devices. The primary goal of my work...
It seems like this guy just doesn't really fit in with society for some reason. Like, he's extremely resistant to doing anything the normal way. Yeah, and you have like, I feel like you have like 1,000 of these people, and for every 1,000, there's some guy who's like super autistic, and he's like, I'm going to do it this way. Like when I used infestors in StarCraft, like I happened to be the one out of whatever. It was like for a while, it was like really good because nobody wanted to explore that. But most people are just like going to grind a particular thing, or not even grind, but they're just like kind of off in a way that there is no use for that person or thing. And then you are just like, okay, well, which is sad. I'm not ragging on the guy, but
was to reduce the amount of data that was being used by these network packets.
This guy seems like he's a victim of the hustler mindset shit. It doesn't sound like he's a victim of it. It just sounds like he really like idolizes or wants to be like an entrepreneur or like do a small business guy or manage. Oh no, well, I mean, we saw his 40-38. We saw his priorities in the beginning of the video. This is what he wants a job to do. Fuck, I'm not going back to it, but
It's from a fleet of IoT devices. The primary goal of my work was to reduce the amount of data that was being used by these network packets in order to reduce the company's mobile data costs. I had always wanted to do a contract where I negotiated some sort of performance upside for myself, so I came to an agreement in the contract that if I met their data reduction goals, that I would get a bonus. After a few months of work, I was able to complete this work and deploy it to production. Around this time, they were almost 1 month late on one of my previous invoices, which did concern me, but one of the previous invoices was also paid late, so it wasn't completely abnormal. Since
see, like, assuming everything he's saying in his story is true, he sounds like he's competent, at least at working, right? So he got a job to do some type of
upside for myself. So I came to an agreement in the contract. I had always wanted to do a contract where I negotiated some sort of performance upside for myself.
yeah, and he's literally setting like an aggressive KPI. Like, okay, well, if I achieve this as part of deploying whatever this is, then I get like a performance bonus, right? You say he's capable of agreeing to these in the meeting. He just doesn't seem like he has like the entrepreneur brain.
So I came to an agreement in the contract that if I met their data reduction goals, that I would get a bonus. After a few months of work, I was able to complete this work and deploy it to production. Around this time, they were almost 1 month late on one of my previous invoices, which did concern me, but one of the previous invoices was also paid late, so it wasn't completely abnormal. Since I had just completed and verified the data reduction goal around this time, I issued my regular monthly invoice, along with another invoice for the performance bonus. Unfortunately, the company had substantially misrepresented their finances, and it was at exactly this time that they started to implode. However, at the time, they were not clear about this at all. Even as much as a year later, they were still trying to suggest that they were just about to get a huge investment and that everything would be great again.
That's always a red flag. And also, why would you even talk to them about their finances? Who cares? It's not your job to follow that. But listen, if people stop paying, then you stop working. Don't keep working past a fail to pay date because, yeah, I mean, like, they might be going under and you don't want to be doing a bunch of like every hour of, here's a self-employment tip. Every hour of work you do past somebody's failure to pay you is work that you are donating to the energies of the universe because you have no idea if they're ever going to fucking pay you again. Don't do that. If they're not paying, then you're not working. Fuck that.
Eventually, the CEO of the company was fired by the board of directors, and in subsequent court filings, they attempted to claim that the company had actually gone defunct long ago. This is despite the fact that just weeks prior to the claims that they submitted to the court, they had attempted to restart the company under a different name. I knew the employees who worked there well, and one of them tipped me off to this fact. They had hired another local consulting company and attempted to continue development work on the product. Shortly after they started, this new relationship fell apart, and work on the product stopped entirely. Just before they ran out of money, they even persuaded a recently hired employee to put business expenses on their personal credit card, and then laid the person off shortly after.
Yes, this is called desperation. Yeah, of course. Like, I can't believe that these guys were going out of business. Like 2 weeks before they went out of business, I saw them go into the bank and take out these massive fucking loans where even the business owner was willing to put his own car up as collateral. Like, I can't believe they went out. Yeah, like no shit. Like healthy businesses with healthy financials aren't doing this.
And didn't reimburse them for the expenses until they filed a legal claim to collect unpaid wages. Initially, some employees were still being paid and kept coming into the office, so I gave the company a few months to get their affairs in order. But once it seemed inevitable that the company was going to fail, I put in a claim in small claims court, hoping that I might get something once the company's assets are liquidated. In total, the company owed me about $18,000 for a couple months of work and the performance bonus. I had already seen some of their financials, and I knew that they did have around $20,000 in revenue per month, and my work specifically had reduced their expenses by about $4,000 a month. So I thought that there was at least some hope that I would get paid, or that there would be at least some proceeds from selling off the functioning business components. I requested an examination hearing in small claims court, which they failed to attend. And in late 2019, I was able to get the directors of the company to provide me with some closure on the company's financial situation by threatening to submit a letter to the judge, requesting that the court find the directors of the company in contempt of court for missing the examination hearing. At this point, the directors did produce some financial records, which made it clear that the company had millions of dollars in unsecured creditors and effectively no unsecured assets to dispose of. The few assets that they did have were secured by bank loans, including one from the Canadian government. The amount of drama that took place at this company was absolutely incredible, and I think it would have made for an excellent script on the TV show Silicon Valley. When I started working with this company, they mentioned another consultant who had started working with them about 6 months prior. They said that they had hired him specifically to improve the product quality and to organize the team better. The way that they described him made it sound like this person was effectively going to be my manager. At the time, I thought, great, there's lots of issues that I can see with this product, so I can talk to this guy and we can come up with a plan to fix all the issues in the product. However, after working with them for a while, this guy never seemed to be around when I was there visiting their office. The founders had once said to me that this person was supposedly writing unit tests for the database. This sounded a bit strange to me, but but I attributed this to the fact that the founders were not that familiar with software development themselves, and
It is strange. Never build tests. Who cares? Who cares?
maybe just used strange wording. I figured maybe he's just writing some unit tests for the data access layer. As I gained more access to their systems and learned about what everyone there was working on, I realized that I didn't know where the Git repo was for whatever this guy was working on. I mentioned to the founders that we really ought to make sure that whatever software he's writing is checked in somewhere. I started to talk to more developers at the company to learn more about the history of this manager consultant person. According to one employee, they had only ever received one email from this person, which
Who cares? Not your problem. Lil bro is over here acting like he's an owner or an investor when he's not even an employee. You're just a contractor. Why? You don't need to. Who the fuck cares about this shit, bro? Submit your work and then walk the fuck away. Who cares if some other dude is doing some other thing? You're literally you're not even an employee. You're just a contractor. Why do you care about any of this?
contained a document describing coding standards. He showed me this document, and I was able to identify it as a plagiarized version of Google's coding standard for the Java programming language. The consultant had simply removed any attribution to Google and replaced it with the name of the company that he was consulting for. When we asked him about the code that he was writing, he simply sent a large zip file of the repo with no source control. We asked if he had a version of the code that tracked the history from the company's mainline branch, but he said that since the company never gave him write access to the repo, he had to develop outside of source control, which is of course nonsense. In the meantime, he had simply
Nothing nonsense about that.
been sending the founder
It all merges the same at the end of the day.
random invoices in the amount of $2,000 to $4,000 for these so-called unit tests. I spent way too much time digging into the code that he sent to see if there was anything there that we should try to merge in. What I found was a bunch of auto-generated, empty unit test stubs that didn't actually test anything. He claimed to have written thousands of these lines of code by hand, but in reality, he used a code generation tool and then deleted the auto-generated stubs that give attribution to the code generation tool.
Well, how do you even know this? Who cares? Not your fucking problem. This is not your problem. Who cares?
I know that this is true because he forgot to delete some of the comment stubs, which allowed me to track down the exact version of the tool.
Lil bro is actually reading through this guy's. This guy probably spent more time debugging this guy's bullshit code for free than this guy even spent, quote unquote, like copy pasting it. What the fuck?
And reproduce his results exactly. The founders didn't really understand what he was working on and continued to give him the benefit of the doubt. But as soon as they started asking more detailed questions about the unit tests, he threatened to sue them. At one point, a very physically fit man, claiming to be the consultant CEO, visited the startup company. During this interaction, the so-called CEO said that he sympathized with the startup founders and that he was disappointed in the consultant's work products. He apparently said that if the positions were reversed, he would not have paid for the work that the consultant delivered either. Then, later that day, this same CEO person threatened to sue them again. In doing this consulting work for the company, the consultant had incorporated a special purpose shell company specifically for this contract. The address of his business was a vacant unit in a nearby business.
Why do you know all this? Are you a PI on the side? Is that like your other fucking job? What the fuck?
Center. I did a bunch of Googling about this person's details, and I just couldn't stop digging because things got weirder and weirder. I came across a news article about someone with the exact same name from another province who was apparently busted for running a medical marijuana growing operation with an expired license from the wrong province. I also found a record of a grant being issued from the Canadian government to one of this person's businesses for a supposed hydroponic lettuce growing business. I also found some SEC filings related to cryptocurrency ICOs in his name, and evidence that he had financial success in developing a network of hundreds of low-quality mobile phone games that made money selling advertisements. It was around this time that it became clear to me that my existing business model wasn't working. I had initially thought that at least one of my clients would eventually become a stable business and start sending me lots of high-quality work, but that never happened. I can understand that sometimes businesses don't work out, but I was unprepared for the level of unprofessional behavior that most of these businesses exhibit. 2019 was the first year when I started experimenting with Kickstarter campaigns on the side. I was still looking to pick up new consulting and contract leads around this time, but it seemed like things were a bit more difficult than they were in the 2014-2015 era. I set up one small Kickstarter campaign about using SSH to do remote backups. I didn't do any work to advertise this campaign at all, and it got $390 in pledges. $390 is not a lot of money, but for having done almost no marketing, it made me think that maybe there was something there. After this,
Wait, what was this?
SSH to do remote backups. In the 2014-2015 era, I set up one small Kickstarter campaign about using SSH to do remote backups. In the 2014-2015 era, I set up one.
A complete guide to backups with SSHKit and Raspberry Pi. I'm writing a guide that teaches people how to self-host their own free automated backup solutions using SSH or Raspberry Pi and Kit. Raspberry Pi for like 1.5 years was like the crypto of the hardware world, where everybody was obsessed with like, this is how I fucking got an anal dildo fucking working on my Raspberry Pi. Bro, yesterday I fucking put my kid to sleep with a Raspberry Pi. Like, oh dude, I figured out how to wire up a Raspberry Pi so that I could fucking set fires to fucking plants in Hawaii. I got my fucking Raspberry Pi to control my computer so that it turns on the pixels automatically, like individually. Raspberry Pi, like it was like the obsessive thing for a while. I don't know where it went, or I mean, I guess it still exists. People use it. It's a cool, I guess, idea. Like little itty bitty microcomputers can do things, but.
one small Kickstarter campaign about using SSH to do remote backups. I didn't do any work to advertise this campaign at all, and it got $390 in pledges. $390 is not a lot of money, but for having done almost no marketing, it made me think that maybe there was something there. After this, I did 4 more Kickstarter campaigns, and each one made successively more money. The 5th campaign that I did was for regular expression fridge magnets, and this campaign made over $4,500. This was enough money to make me think that there might be a business model behind repeatedly doing these small campaigns. I thought maybe I could build a list of repeat customers, and then start using social media advertising to get new customers and achieve growth. Around this time, I started experimenting with paid advertising on different platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and Google Ads. I also started my YouTube channel around this time, and some of my initial content is from these Kickstarter campaigns. At first, I was able to make a handful of sales through paid advertising, but I was never quite able to achieve a positive return on ad spend. I think the limiting factor in my case was that I just didn't have enough sales and marketing data to make the ad targeting effective enough. Around 2021, the iOS 14 advertising apocalypse happened. This event, along with the fallout from things like the Cambridge Analytica scandal, made Facebook advertising much less effective. I also noticed around this time that the Kickstarter campaigns I was doing became much less effective and were only able to make a few $100s. What I think was happening was that my Kickstarter campaigns were inadvertently benefiting from the targeted advertising of other people's Facebook campaigns. Using Facebook ads to
How many Kickstarter campaigns?
direct traffic to Kickstarter campaigns was quite
Were they all for Raspberry Pis? I'm sorry.
common around this time, and many people who convert on a given Kickstarter campaign are also likely to make a pledge to a second Kickstarter campaign. If you make a pledge on a given campaign, Kickstarter will start recommending similar campaigns to you. When Facebook traffic was cheap and effective, I think there was a huge surplus of this warm traffic from Facebook, and I was able to pick up the scraps without spending anything on advertising. In 2023, I was fortunate enough to get another software development contract from the company of someone that I knew from university. From a pure business perspective, this contract was the best one that I ever had in my 10 years of doing this consulting business. They paid me on time, the project goal was well defined and compartmentalized, and the work appeared to actually serve a meaningful business purpose. The development work itself wasn't very exciting. It involved picking up a stalled project migration and getting it deployed to production. The project only lasted about 6 months, and once it was completed, the company sought full-time employees to maintain it. By this point, my viewership on YouTube had been growing for a while now, and I was still doing a bit of work on the reporting contract. June 2023 was the first corporate year end where I recorded revenue from YouTube in the amount of 400. It was extremely stressful on students.
Fuck me, I just clicked the wrong thing. I was trying to pause it.
To actually serve a meaningful business purpose. The development work itself wasn't very exciting. It involved picking up a stalled project migration and getting it deployed to production. The project,
Like, assuming he's capable of doing this stuff, and I'm assuming he's working on this alone, right? But like, it sounds like he's somewhat competent, assuming he's not like overselling what he did or whatever, right? That there's a stalled project, he's able to go in here and pick it up and figure out what needs to happen to finish. Like, this sounds like almost like a nightmare, annoying project to deal with. And he's able to like do these things, but then I don't know, he's like contracting himself out to do these small projects, and then he just goes on to something else, and he's like nothing stable, and like, I don't know.
project only lasted about 6 months, and once it was completed, the company sought full-time employees to maintain it. By this point, my viewership on YouTube had been growing for a while now, and I was still doing a bit of work on the reporting contract. June 2023 was the first.
This motherfucker would not thrive in a 9-to-5. He would annoy the shit out of his manager with this behavior. I feel like he would be good in a 9-to-5 where he's like utilized well. The only reason I say this is because like you have like dreamer people who always have ideas, but they can't back it up with fucking anything. But it sounds like he does have competency in programming. I mean, he graduated from his university. It sounds like he is able to actually do projects. Like he's not, like assuming that self-compiler that he built works, he sounds like he has like a passion even for it. He does enjoy the theory or concept or conceptualization of like programming or whatever, and he can like work on things. As long as he's like used, like this is a guy where if you like, it feels like this is the type of guy that you could put him in the right spot, he could do a lot of really good work. Like you put him at a company where he feels like he's got a big buy-in to the success of the project. He like spiritually is aligned with the vision of it, and he's like feels fulfilled at work. It feels like he's like that type of person. But
first corporate year end where I recorded revenue from YouTube in the amount of $495. And for the June 2024 corporate year end, I recorded revenue from YouTube in the amount of $6,529. So here's a graph that shows a breakdown of all my revenue in every year over the last 10 years. In total, over the last 10 years, my business has produced around $257,000 in revenue.
which is less than the median salary in 1 year of a graduate from his class. Jeez.
Mostly from 8 distinct clients. As you can see, the revenue is pitifully small and shows no signs of growth. In fact, I've only ever had 1 year where I made more than $30,000. And last year, I made almost as much money as the first year that I started. And on top of that, almost all living expenses are now twice what they were 10 years ago. Now, it's worth asking, where did this $257,000 go? Over that time, about $110,000 became net payroll toward myself. About $30,000 went toward operating.
Like, am I crazy, or wasn't this guy considered like really smart? The guy that wrote Temple OS? And that there were like some kind of cool things about this, but the dude is just like fucking crazy, and nobody uses his operating system, obviously. But I thought the dude was considered like pretty intelligent. Didn't he write this when he was like, was he still a teenager, or? He was very smart, but he was very sick. Okay, I don't want to like oversell it because I don't know fuck all. But like he built his own like operating system. But I think he's, oh damn, and he's dead. Rip. Oh, I'm sorry. A biblical themed lightweight operating system designed to be the third temple prophesied in the Bible. He was born in 69, died at 48 years. Out of fear of the figures he believed that were following him, Davis drove hundreds of miles south with no destination. After becoming convinced that his car radio was communicating with him, he dismantled his vehicle, apparently in a search for tracking devices that he believed were hidden inside of it, and threw his keys into the desert. You're linking me things. Doesn't he, like, I don't know if this is like one of his videos where he's like screaming the N-word. I think he did shit like that, didn't he?
I'm the best programmer on earth. That's why God chose me. And he gave me divine intellect. This is divine intellect. Isn't it obvious? So I have an ISO creation tool. I have a compiler. Basically, I'm the best programmer on earth chosen by God. And I was endowed with divine intellect. I'm the best programmer on earth, as evident by divine intellect. And fuck you.
How did he die? While walking alongside railroad tracks in the Dalles, Davis was struck and killed by a Union Pacific train. Damn. Okay, well.
Operating expenses, and around $30,000 was reinvested in the business for things like business experiments, computers and hard drives, the camera that's in front of me right now. I spent around $25,000 in accounting and legal fees. About $10,000 went to employees and employer contributions to the Canadian pension plan, and about $5,000 went to corporate and other payroll taxes. Over this period of time, I've personally spent around $120,000 on rent. You might be wondering, how is it possible that you spent $120,000 on rent, but you've only paid yourself $110,000? And the answer is that I've had a family member as a roommate for some of the last 10 years. As of today, I have absolutely no equity in any form of real estate, and I'm just barely hanging on to my apartment. Reflecting on the last 10 years, I can give you the following insights. Isolated and self-contained software development projects are extremely rare, and most of the work that companies want done always requires integrated communication. It requires many back and forth emails, meetings, clarifications, corrections. This is one of the main reasons why companies don't want to hire an external contractor. Another major reason is part of the whole pump and dump model of venture capital funded startups. The goal for most of these companies is not to actually run them and produce economically valuable output. Instead, it's to get acquired by Google or Microsoft, and the amount of payout from an acquisition will usually be based on the company's headcount. This means that it's better to have 100 employees that are doing nothing at the time of an acquisition than it is to have one external contractor who productively runs your entire business.
I don't know about that. I've never heard that claim before, that the value of your acquisition is based on number of employees. I've never heard that in my entire life. But then but I mean, maybe I'm...
You may have been misled in the past into thinking that companies prefer to hire external contractors, since there are some benefits, like not needing to do payroll or pay health benefits. However, many of the articles that you read about it being better or cheaper to hire external contractors are actually just propaganda, written by consultants and contractors themselves to try and get business. The other major mistake that I made was in assuming that most entrepreneurs actually want to produce economically useful outputs. In reality, most entrepreneurs, especially tech entrepreneurs, are really just scamming investors or the government. A fairly common model that founders follow looks something like this. Raise venture capital for a company based on a pitch that follows whatever the current trend or virtue signal is, whether that's big data, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, or climate change. Then, assign yourself the role of CEO or CTO and pay yourself at least $170,000 per year, with some extra benefits and bonuses sprinkled on top. Additionally, network with prominent people in your industry and government. Maybe even get some of them to join your board of directors. Next, try to get your company additional investments through some kind of taxpayer-funded innovation initiative. Once you get the investment, do the bare minimum to keep the company running until you run out of funding and can't raise any more rounds. Then, the company will eventually fail, or get acquired for an amount of money that's less than the sum of the input investments. To the uninformed general public, this might even look like success. At this point, though, you've already been paying yourself a handsome salary for years, and you can just shrug your shoulders and say, oh well, I tried. You might even get to liquidate a bit of your equity, even if the company is acquired at a loss. This strategy is not ethical or economically sustainable.
I mean, if you have equity, of course you're getting paid for it, regardless of if it's... Okay.
Which is why I haven't pursued it at all. I don't advise you to do any of this, but this is an extremely common strategy that I've observed. This topic is one that I've wanted to discuss for a while now, and now that there are more examples of this being reported in the mainstream news, I can hopefully convince you that what you see reported in the mainstream media is just the tip of the iceberg. These kinds of things are highly unethical, and I don't advise you to do any...
Destiny, unit tests all day, every day, but not for the database. That makes no sense. The reason why unit tests are stupid is because you already have a unit test. It's called production, and you already have unit testers. They're called users or customers. Fuck them, okay?
Any of them, but unfortunately, this is increasingly becoming the only way to run a successful business in this country. White-collar crime in Canada is starting to get out of control, and it's starting to compete with the regular civilian economy. This ecosystem of unproductive startups wouldn't be possible if it weren't for the substantial misallocation of taxpayer money that you see repeatedly reported in the news today. Case studies like GC Strategies, the SDTC Fund, the We Charity scandal are all perfect examples. Even in my tiny business, I've occasionally gotten cold calls from companies offering to do grants for me for a cut of the action. This is despite the fact that in the last few years, I basically never get new software development leads anymore. Back when I first started, I did get a few inbound leads here and there, but that's mostly dried up. The narrative of the last decade has been that software developers are in extremely short supply. But I think that the actual truth is that good leadership is in short supply. Basically all of the high-paying tech work is concentrated at the big tech companies, and everything outside of that is mostly just unproductive nonsense. On the other hand, I do probably get about
I feel like this is kind of true from a vibes-based feelings, because if you do have an actual productive company, it's just going to get acquired by one of those motherfuckers anyway. That's what it feels like, but I don't know. Maybe I'm exaggerating a bit there, but
5 emails a day from other software development companies wanting to sell their services to me. Even in just the last few days, I received a couple emails from people looking for work. Having said this, if you look at the content that I've been posting on social media over the last couple of years, you might say that the reason I don't get consulting leads anymore is because a lot of the stuff that I publish is quite unprofessional. But the reality is, this is the only type of content that's shown any growth for me. I've been quite professional and obedient for pretty much my entire life, and that didn't get me anywhere. So I'm going to stop doing that. Now,
professional and obedient? My dude, you refuse to get an ordinary-ass job. What do you mean?
Now, switching topics back to my future and living situation, you might be wondering, why don't I get a roommate again to help pay the rent? I actually had been thinking about getting a roommate again recently. Unfortunately, according to my new landlord, I am not allowed to have roommates, even though I pay for a 2-bedroom apartment. From what I understand, this
Oh shit, sorry. I accidentally pasted something in chat.
is not consistent with existing tenancy law, so it's yet another thing that I'll have to fight for at the landlord and tenant board. As I mentioned before, I'm starting to become a bit neutral on the idea of getting evicted. Having to fight against draconian restrictions like this
Is this AI?
is becoming more and more common here in Ontario. And if the conditions for a normal human life don't exist here anymore, then maybe it's time to move somewhere else. The next question that you're probably wondering is, why don't you have a dual income household? Why are you not married? Why don't you have a family of your own? There's a lot that could be said about this topic, but the short version is that almost every environment that I've been in my adult life has been almost 100% male, 100% senior citizens, or both. Growing up, I lived in the middle of nowhere, in a rural area, populated mostly by elderly farmers. In 2009, I moved up here to Ontario to study software engineering, and I still have my original class photo list from when I first started. Looking at the class list right now, I count 7 out of 117, or about 5% of the starting class was female. Now, let's take a look at my graduating class. I count 5 out of 85, or about 6% of the graduating class was female. However,
Okay, this is getting a little weird. Wait, I thought we read on that thing that it was like 25% instead of respondents were female. Maybe a lot of men didn't respond, or to that survey thing?
this can be an overestimate of the gender ratio, since a few of my elective classes, such as real-time programming, were literally 100% male. Now, you could say, but Robert, you've got to get out there, meet people outside your program, go to extracurricular activities, and that's true.
That was for the year 2020. Oh, my bad. He graduated a while ago.
So I did. For a while, I actually took dancing lessons at the University of Waterloo, but even this was about 70% male. Since there were not enough women to pair people up, some of the men would end up dancing by themselves, or dancing with another man. I also found that dancing lessons require a surprising amount of focus and practice. I was never really good at it, and I didn't particularly enjoy it, in my opinion.
Well, that's why you take lessons.
Dancing lessons don't provide a great venue to get to know someone anyway. As you might expect, the gender ratio of the workplace in tech isn't much different. Now, this is kind of an exaggeration, but since I've started doing software development, I've never actually had a female coworker who I worked with on a daily basis. Of course, many roles in HR and marketing are usually filled by women, but my jobs usually have little to no interaction with these teams. Now, the exceptions are, I did have a female boss on 4 different occasions. I also had a period of about a couple months during one co-op placement where I did sort of have a female coworker. I would usually say hi to her when I arrived at work in the morning, although she almost never responded. I don't think she was being rude. I think it was just an autism spectrum thing. I also think that I might have had a female team member for a brief period of time just before I left Amazon, although I never interacted with this person, and she worked remotely. In doing my contract work over the years, I have occasionally interacted with female managers and product managers, and at Conestoga College, there were a few older, married female professors who I interacted with occasionally. Now, you could say, you've got to meet people outside of work, go to events, and that's true, you can. When I was at Amazon, I did go to local networking events for a while. Since so many of the people in Seattle work at Amazon, a lot of them are just other men who are exactly like me, with the same idea. I also talked in my other video about how the entire team had to stay late on Valentine's Day to release Amazon Redshift, and many of the full-times had to work past midnight on this day. When you combine this with the fact that full-time employees also have to do on-call work, this doesn't give you a lot of opportunity to develop a personal life. Now, the next question you're probably thinking is, surely in the last 20 years, you must have met some people outside of work or school. So, for completeness, I've constructed this diagram, which illustrates every time that I can recall
Oh no!
going on a date with a woman, or being in a relationship. During undergrad, the usual pattern was that I'd meet someone and have a handful of interactions with them. As the term picked up, we'd both become so busy that both of our schedules would always be in conflict. Then, after the 4-month term was up, we'd both be in different provinces or countries and never really see each other again. After I graduated, I sacrificed a lot of personal time to try and build up the business. I had hoped that things would pick up, and that I'd naturally build up a community of
Why do men expect to just stumble upon women in the wild and fall in love? Like outside of dating apps, how common is it for someone to start dating a completely random person that isn't already in their circle/friend group? Well, so unironically, this is one of the only times, okay, because that whole like one person working and supports a family of 12 and blah, 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 all of that is bullshit. This is one of the few times where it was a lot easier because like, like if I was a kid today, if I was 14, my Friday and Saturday would be, we're loading up the Rift. Let's fucking go, boys. But when I was in high school, my Friday, Saturday was going out and doing things because I don't know that many people played online games. That was like super nerd shit. So we're going like bowling, we're going to the skating rink, we're going to somebody's house, like there'll be like a house party or whatever. And there's always like guys and girls at all these places, like equal amounts of guys and girls because it's all like your local classmates and everything. I don't know if I would even be involved in that anymore. Did I say bowling? I said bowling. Bowling. Yeah, you go like a bowl, and it's like a social place. Yeah, skating, bowling, laser tag, although it was a little bit more hardcore. I'm very competitive. Yeah, I don't know, shit like that. But yeah, today I think I would probably just be playing video games. That'd be fucked. The mall, I never did that shit. Go to the mall, I hated that. Fuck that bullshit. I'd rather go out and do something.
People around me. In 2018, I started to think that business was finally picking up and that I'd be able to bank a lot of money. That is, of course, just before the company that I was doing work for started to implode. Since they never made it clear that they were giving up on their business, and in fact said the opposite as much as a year later, I wasted a lot of time chasing them around in court, hoping to recover some of the money that they owed. And on top of that, I had to scramble to try and look for more contracts to make up for the income shortfall. Late 2019 was when I finally got closure on the lost income and started to get my momentum back. Then, a couple months later, in 2020, a global pandemic happened, and this caused some of my other work to be cancelled. So again, I was scrambling to try and find new sources of revenue. And I almost forgot, during the pandemic, you weren't allowed to go anywhere or do anything. Then, in 2023, the building that I live in
That's based. The women are trapped in the apartment complex with you. They can't escape.
bought by the famous renoviction landlord, and for 2024, most of my spare time has gone toward trying to avoid getting renovicted. When the renovictions first started, I actually thought that this might be a great opportunity for me to start meeting people again and work together to fight the renovation process. Unfortunately, society has deteriorated a lot more than I had thought in the last few years.
Hey, hello? Do you want to fight the landlord? You want to fill out this form? I'm sorry, I'm just kidding. I'm being really mean right now. My bad. Maybe not.
And many people seem to be struggling with serious mental, physical, and financial issues. In meeting some of the other tenants who live here, one of the things that I paid attention to was, are there any single women who are less than 65 years of age who live in this building? And so far, I haven't met any. However, it's was, are there mental, physical, and financial issues? In meeting some of the other tenants who live here, one of the things that I paid attention to was, are there any single women who are less than 65 years of age who live in this building? And so far, I haven't met any. However, it's not all bad news. Now, I don't mean to brag, but since the renovation started, I do have semi-regular contact with about 4 or 5 elderly women who live in this building. Sometimes, I meet them on the sidewalk and help them carry their groceries home. I also try to keep them updated on the current renovation situation. So if you're looking to meet elderly single women, I can testify that Kitchener is definitely the place to be. The renovations in this building
Listen, okay? Be in the right environment and make opportunities for yourself. You have elderly women that you're hanging out with. Elderly women, you should be doing all their grocery shopping, okay? You should be helping them up and down the stairs whenever you can. Whatever the fuck you can do to help these people. And you know what? When you're chatting with these ladies, when you're helping them back inside, glad I could help, you know? Pretty sad I don't have anywhere to be at Thanksgiving, you know? Nothing to do this Christmas. Hope you're having fun. Get the invitations to the family events and have the grandmas hook you up with the granddaughters or daughter. I don't know, however old. Well, I guess for him it would be daughters. Have them hook you up with their... Yeah, I'm sure some of these ladies must know some single women, okay? Some daughters or some nieces or whatever the fuck else that are young and around his age. Work the system, man.
have caused a lot of tenant turnover and allowed me to meet even more new people.
Or just fuck the grandmas. You're 37, bro. Fuck it.
Recently, I've networked a bit with some of the new tenants who are replacing the old ones. Many of them are immigrant families with young children who just arrived from countries like Eritrea, Sudan,
India. Give me the India. Hit me up with the big India one for the video. Please give me the India.
Lebanon, and India.
Yes!
When I meet them in the lobby or the elevator, I'll usually chat with them a bit to try and get to know them better. Many of them seem quite friendly, although often, when I try to have an extended conversation with them,
They don't
a
speak
lot of them
English.
will just say no English. Now, the final question worth asking is, given everything that you've said in this video, what would you do differently? What kind of life advice would I give to someone who is just starting out where I was?
Work a 9 to 5, work a 9 to 5, work a 9 to 5, work a 9 to 5 for at least like 5 or 10 years. So you get experience, you can get a whole list of clients that you can steal and violate your NDA and non-competes when you leave your job. And you know, you're ready, you understand the market a little bit better and you've got some money saved away, okay?
10 or 15 15 years ago? That's a very difficult question to answer. It's easy to give advice about what to do if you could go back into the world of 10 years ago. But your life is not going to start 10 years in the past, and the conditions of the world today are completely different. If I was able to rewind the clock and go back to working at Amazon or Nvidia directly after graduation, I could have been a millionaire by now. $20,000 worth of Nvidia stock options from 2014 would be worth about $5 million today. But then again, most of the money would have come from the appreciation of the company stock.
Yeah, I don't think most people were getting $20,000 in stock in Nvidia back then. How many that would have been how many shares and what? And how long ago did he say? In 2015? What are they cutting you? What would this be? 40,000 shares of Nvidia? Jesus Christ.
Not from the salary of actually working there. So the best strategy would have been to just get a student loan and spend all of it on Nvidia stock. And then
No, what a bad lesson to take from this. Well, what I should have done is I should have had the almanac. I should have gambled everything on this sports team.
go sit on the beach for the 5 years that I spent in school and the 10 years that I spent trying to start a business. However, giving life advice that's based on the last 10 years of stock market performance is lazy and somewhat irresponsible. I went to school with someone who got a full-time job at Uber back around 2011 or 12. I remember having discussions with my peers.
Unit tests are to protect the code from future changes by developers who don't know how things are supposed to function. Well, if the unit tests fail over and over again, you got to change the code anyway. And why would you deprive your future programmers of all that wonderful money that they would be earning by going through the code and looking at what they have to change, my dude? You're hurting future developers.
About how this guy was going to become a millionaire when Uber IPO'd. However, because of unfavorable market conditions, Uber kept delaying their IPO over and over again, and didn't actually end up IPOing until 2019. Even though he did the full-time grind for years, he ended up leaving well before the IPO date, and I assume didn't benefit much from the stock options. If you only focus on the salary that I would have made from Nvidia or Amazon, then I would probably have a partially paid off house or condo by now. I also graduated into one of the best possible job markets for software engineers. But today, the job market is a lot more competitive, and housing is way more expensive. The most significant economic factor of the last 15 years was the unprecedented period of near zero interest rates. But as you may be aware, interest rates are now higher, and the Federal Reserve has repeatedly stated that interest rates will now be higher for longer. If you're young, you might think that interest rates have little to do with the job market or the...
This is going to sound like really memey, but like just mentally try to do this experiment. If you think really hard right now and you go back 10 years and you think about all the opportunities you missed, there are so many ways that you fucked your life up where your life could have been infinitely better. There are so many missed opportunities, so many things you could have done. And a lot of these things, you knew at the time that you should have been doing them. And you've missed opportunities that will never be around again, that you've permanently lost access to, okay? So think about that, okay? And feel that pain, all right? But now, okay, mentally advance yourself 10 years, and that exact same thing can be said about where you are right now. There are certain things, especially if you're hitting your 30s or 40s, or even 50s, right? There are things that you have in your life right now that you're not giving any credit for. Like if you are healthy and you have good mobility and you can move around, even something as stupid as that is such an asset in terms of ways that you can apply yourself. Or you've got like time to like still learn things or pick up a skill or change jobs or change where you live. Like there are things you can do now. Like always, like 10 years from now, what are you going to look back on right now and think like, fuck, I should have just done that thing? Because however bad you feel, looking back 10 years ago and realizing you missed that many opportunities, like that's happening right now every single day.
Economy. However, the single best piece of advice that I can probably give you in this video is to make sure that you understand the relationship between the Federal Reserve's interest rate decisions and the overall economic cycle. In hindsight, I absolutely should have left Canada when I had the chance to 10 years ago. But back then, the future for Canada's tech sector looked fairly bright, which is one of the reasons why I stayed. And so, you're probably
This guy's like learning all the worst lessons.
wondering, would I give the same advice to leave Canada today? The predictable answer is just to say yes out of spite. But if I'm going to give advice, I should probably try to be more thoughtful. It's possible that we've already been through the worst of Canada's decline, and things are about to turn a corner. After all, how much worse can things get, right? If I was to imagine a bright future for Canada, it would probably come from a boom in the US economy that spills over into Canada. Since the US economy is 10 times the size of ours, what happens in the US economy can have a bigger impact on our daily lives than what happens in our own country. This fact alone gives you a pretty good case for leaving Canada for the US either way. Life in Canada would be a lot better if our housing affordability situation would improve a bit. But when you look at the CMHC's housing forecasts, they seem to predict a fairly bleak future until at least the 2030s. From what I see in the news though now, housing affordability...
One thing I will say to warn you against, and I've said this, that I had conversations with friends like this in the past, do not build your life around your political understandings. Don't. If you start trying to make career decisions or life decisions based on what you see on Twitter, like, I'm never going to be able to afford a house. Well, what's up, bro? What do you mean? What's going on? Like, is your job going to lay you off, or did you get like a pay cut, or what's going on? It's like the fucking Federal Reserve, man. The interest rates are just crazy. And I think that, I think BlackRock is going to buy them. I was like, bro, don't get the fuck off Twitter. What are you talking about? Stop. Don't read that shit. Okay. Work on your life. Figure your shit out. Why are you You don't need to read fucking Twitter politics to decide what you want your future to look like. Don't do this.
Is basically out of control in all Western countries right now. It's tempting to think that the grass is greener if you just move some results. But if you do, you might discover that you're actually just
Game developer here, Canada. Honestly, he might sound okay, analytical or something, but looking at CV, website, there is a lack of references, places he has worked. I wouldn't hire this guy. Sounds like you're just a hater. Do you know, you understand that this guy literally built a self-compiling C compiler, self-contained C compiler? How many have you built like that? And by the way, his gives way more detailed error messages than whatever dog shit C compiler you're working with, okay? Way better error messages.
It's tempting to think that the grass is greener if you just move some results. But if you do, you might discover that you're actually just trading one bleak future for a different one. So it's important for you to do a lot of research before you move some results. I'm not qualified to speak about what life is like in somewhere like the Bay Area or Texas, but hopefully I've provided you with a fairly detailed look of my entrepreneurial experience here in Canada. Another conclusion that you might draw from this video is that I might have done better if I'd just gone into the trades, instead of getting an expensive and tedious academic degree like software engineering. But again, I think it's more complicated than that. A couple of years ago, I talked to some trades workers who were here in my apartment doing repairs under the previous owner. I made some comments about how I might have done better in life if I had gone into the trades instead. The worker said that in his industry, it's nearly impossible to get trades work unless you do it through an intermediary company, and that all of the apartment buildings and construction companies collude together to keep wages suppressed. The worker said that he can make around 100 Canadian dollars on a good day. In the last year, since this building was taken over by its new owner, I've had many chances to chat with the trades workers who are doing the renovation work. Some of them have said that they're very unhappy with the working conditions, but they have no choice. Others simply reply with no English, even when I ask them a simple question like, "Hi, how are you?" When it comes to giving advice on how to start a software consulting or contracting business, the advice I give you would probably be to not start one at all, unless you already have a lot of deep industry or government connections from day one. Your experience might end up being similar to mine. And there you have it, the full story of why I'm in the situation that I'm in, and an insight into the logical reasoning that got me here. Hopefully, you can analyze the things that I've said and the decisions that I made, so that you can avoid becoming a 37-year-old broke loser.
Jesus Christ. Well, I feel like we didn't learn any lessons there, but... Does it smell of self-pity at all, or is he giving sincere advice? I mean, I don't know if it didn't sound very much like self-pity. It just feels like he didn't have a good grasp on what held, but whatever. I don't know. Damn. That was depressing. All right. Well, listen, I love you guys. I'll be back tomorrow. Be careful. Stay safe. Wait, is that what my head looks like? Wait, is this real?